We shall talk.
Patrick Cahill says, lads, this is pathetic. It's what happens with Hannon in the main seat. So I'm getting the blamed apparently for the sound issues.
It's something came down from high saying just do not turn on his mic.
It would be funny if it was just my mic not working.
Getting back to the game though, I think for Potter you do definitely feel some happiness for him, just the pressure he was under, and you feel the crowd, like in the last couple of games, were just willing them to just win, and they've kept a couple of clean sheets now, in the sense of probably rode their luck a bit last night, but this could be the start of the Potter regime. Like, a lot of talk about the amount of players in the squad, but they were all playing for him without a shadow of a doubt, and it's maybe just, we're back, are we?
We're back.
There we go.
Everyone on YouTube, everyone on Facebook, everyone on Twitter, you've been looking at us mouthing words for the last 7-8 minutes, but we haven't been talking shite. We've generally been having I think it was the best 7 or 8 minutes we've ever had. In fact, you just missed it. But it appears everyone missed it, so don't worry. But it's myself, Johnny Ward, and Nathan Murphy with you for the first half an hour of the show or so on this Wednesday morning. I did get the day wrong at the start of the show, and no one heard that, but now I've outed myself once again. Graham Potter, is the pressure off? It does feel, doesn't it, that last night the sense around Stamford Bridge was he'll get to the end of the season, which means he'll get another transfer market, he'll get a full pre-season with this group, and maybe he'll have an opportunity to turn this around. I don't remember a manager in recent times where there's been such pity for. Like, there's a real sense of, I'll just keep him in the job, but they're losing all their matches and they don't score any goals with one of the most expensively assembled squads I've ever seen. But he deserves a chance. He's getting... And maybe, listen, the obvious thing would be because he's English, he gets a little bit more of a free ride than other managers. I don't think that would be fair in him. He's had such a brilliant story. He is what you want from somebody in football who hasn't had the career at the very, very top, but has gone off, has educated himself, has gone around Europe, has done everything right, and has managed to work his way up that ladder. That he deserves more than just a few weeks at a basket case of a club who have spent an insane amount of money, probably without discussing it with him a huge amount, that he should be given time to spend a summer on the training ground with the players to figure out what his best 11 is, to get rid of the players he doesn't want. Like, that's definitely an issue, is that they have so many players available right now. There's got to be a huge amount of big personalities who aren't getting anywhere near enough game time, and how you manage them, and you can't manage all of them, so he just needs to get rid of some of them during the summer. And he's a good manager. We've seen from what he did at Brighton, he's a very good manager. The question is that he's always had a problem at Brighton with his teams scoring goals, and he was given a bit of a free pass because they were at that lower level and they never had a world-class striker. Like, I think Neil Maupay was their top scorer for the last couple of years, and he wasn't even reaching double figures. But now they're having problems scoring goals again with a huge amount of talent. I'm not convinced all of them are at the very, very top, but he doesn't seem to be able to get his front three linking up in a way that's going to devastate teams. Again, doesn't seem quite sure as to how to get the best out of somebody like Mudryk, who, now we're looking at that little cameo against Liverpool where he looked like he was going to be absolutely devastating. We've barely seen him since. How does he get him into his team and get the very best out of him? How does he keep Raheem Sterling happy if he's not playing all the time? How does he get Sterling back to his very best, where he's taking the sort of chances he was missing last night? So I think he's definitely done enough with that victory to probably get him to the end of the season. But like every Chelsea manager, if he does survive till the start of next season, he's going to have to start fast. You know what he needs to do? I think he needs to sign a few players. I don't think their squad is deep enough. I don't think they have enough players in that squad.
You say that. They do still need a striker.
Yeah.
They need someone who's actually going to go and lead the line. Is he happy with João Felix? Kai Havertz is not that player. I get he feels almost like an Irish striker. We give him that. He works hard for the team. He does a lot of on-scene work, just doesn't score enough goals. Like, the Chelsea striker needs to be scoring a lot of goals.
It's mad. Imagine spending $500 million and not buying a proper number 10. Did you see João Felix's press conference yesterday? One of the journalists, now this came out of nowhere, one of the journalists was like, is it true that we have been pronouncing your name entirely wrong the whole time? And João Felix was like, well, yeah, every journalist in England, and it happened, previous club as well, pronounces it wrong. My name is João Felix. Felix.
Right.
But we've all been calling him Felix. And he's like, yeah, I don't know why people call me Felix. It's just stuck. But my name is João Felix.
Strikers like Felix.
There you go.
Felix. They're actually contenders in the Champions League now, I think. You wouldn't really fancy playing them. It looks to me quite open. I mean, it's like, this is a team I think that'll just grow in confidence a bit. And they're just, at times last night they were very good, I thought.
Yeah, and like as Nathan mentioned, the lack of goals has been an issue, but that's the first time I think this year, calendar year in 2023, that they've scored 2 goals in a match.
You could
Clean
see in
sheet.
front of goal as well their confidence, but it's like Sterling will get confidence from scoring. They scored from a set piece on Saturday, and they hit the post, I think, at least one Saturday as well. They will get confidence from that, like, you know.
Yeah. If you're
Well, even the first goal that Sterling scored, sure, he tried every possible way to make a complete mess of it. And Karen Carney made a good point when Kai Havertz smacked one in from 25 yards when Sterling had been offside of. You could sort of tell by the way he finished it that he knew he was offside.
Yeah,
It was a sort of more relaxed nature, that when the pressure was on, they were still missing chances. But yeah, Champions League always feels somewhat wide open. I know we often say the last few years it's been Liverpool or Manchester City, and then Real Madrid come in and surprise everybody. Madrid do look the strongest and they have the know-how, but Chelsea have done this before. And this group of last 16 fixtures feel like they're going to throw up a few more surprises than we maybe expected. Maybe a couple of teams drop out, and if you get a nice draw along the way, if they're in the quarter-final already, it doesn't take an absolute miracle now for them to suddenly find themselves in a Champions League final. And yeah, last night again, I thought midfield, Fernandes and Kovacic. Remember, they're still missing N'Golo Kante. Maybe N'Golo Kante doesn't play again this season. Maybe he doesn't play again for Chelsea. But Kovacic stood up last night and really brought that game to Borussia Dortmund. So if they can keep those four, I think if they can keep Chilwell and James, we're talking about maybe at their best as good a fullback partnership as there is in the Premier League.
Yeah.
I know people will say Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, but they provide a different thing for Chelsea. They're far more important, I think, almost for Chelsea than the other two are for Liverpool, because so much comes through the two of them. I think that might have been the 4th game in 50 that the two of them have been able to start for Chelsea.
Wow.
Jude Bellingham is so impressive to listen to in post-match interviews. Like you forget how young he is when he speaks, because he's so like articulate and interesting to talk to and to listen to. And you mentioned Kovacic. Like, Kovacic did a job on him last night in many ways. Like, he had the legs, I guess, to control him and to nullify that. I know Dortmund were missing players, but Bellingham was kept out of the game for large periods.
Yeah, it was one of the quieter games that we've seen him. He obviously had a couple of chances as well, didn't go his way. And you could sense his frustration in the last 10 minutes. He's getting involved in every little scrap and niggle. I always admire a player who'll fight with his international teammates as well. Like, he was having a proper go at Chilwell. He obviously nailed Reece James right at the very end. So it wasn't one of his best nights, but it's hard. I know the talk yesterday, there was quite a lot of rumours, as always, swirling around him, that his father was meeting Real Madrid's representatives in London ahead of the game, that Borussia Dortmund were growing a bit more confident that he might stay, that they were going to triple his wages and put him on about 350 grand a week. Like, he is going to be the story of the next 3 or 4 months, and whether it is Real Madrid, whether it is Liverpool, or maybe Manchester City can steal in and get him as well, but wherever he goes, he's going to make your midfield a hell of a lot better.
It's funny, when Birmingham City retired his number when he left as a 16-year-old, I was like, this is ridiculous. Can kind of understand it now. It makes a little bit more sense now a few years later than it did at the time. For people who maybe didn't hear us at the start of the show talking about the Kai Havertz penalty incident and the encroachment, #encroachment, like, it took nerves from Kai Havertz not only to step up again, because I saw the interview on the pitch with himself and Raheem Sterling after the game with BT. And like, Reece James was the other option. They could have brought him in to take the second attempt, but like, he took it, and not only that, but did the same penalty. Like, literally was like, I'm going to go the exact same place, going to watch the keeper, and nailed it. Like, that takes nerves too, because you can change your mind as a penalty taker. I know myself, it's Sunday League football, Johnny.
Yeah, former Man United mascot. It's a strange one though, in the sense of, if you miss a penalty, why does that make you any less kind of viable as the penalty taker a minute later? When you were the penalty taker literally a minute ago, why are you now not the penalty taker?
Because there's bound to be a psychology there where you're shook a little bit and you're overthinking the second kick. Surely.
Possibly, but not necessarily either. I mean, if you're a penalty taker, it should be fairly routine in terms of what you do, regardless of whether it's on the training ground or whether 80,000 people there. You know, you have a good idea of what the goalkeeper you're facing is likely to do from doing your analysis beforehand. But it seems to be a thing that we'll change it. And I was delighted that he took the second one and just literally Control Alt and is it V for Control V, just literally copy and paste, do it again.
He's a good FIFA man.
Do you know the funny thing though, Nathan? If you add in the League of Ireland and the Premier League, it was one of the most ridiculous couple of days of basket cases results I've ever seen, because Liverpool scored 7 goals from 8 shots on target against Man United, a game where I really fancied Man United I fancied Man United anyway. Does this now mean that Liverpool, and I just thought it was a bit strange that Klopp ruled out the Real Madrid game. If Liverpool get 1 goal in Madrid, if they could get 7, Man United are not far off Real Madrid, right? If they can't, and Salah had a great game, maybe it's not over.
If you can score 7 against Manchester United, you can score 7 anywhere. I think it's understandable why he's not going to come out and say, listen, we're going to go and do this again. There's no doubt if the game was at Anfield, if the second leg was at Anfield, there'd be a very, very different conversation about this, particularly with the history of the Barcelona semi-final. The problem for Liverpool is, can they there's no doubt they can go and score 3 goals. Can they get through a game against the quality of Real Madrid without conceding as well? And
they've kept 5 clean sheets in a row in the league, I think.
Yeah. But the psychology of them having to go, they were, remember, it was 1-0, how long was it into the game before Cody Gakpo scored that open goal? Liverpool didn't need to push it at all against Manchester United. I think Liverpool would have probably taken a draw in that game as well. They were sort of happy to bide their time, knowing the form that Manchester United were in. I think they could definitely go and score 3 goals against Real Madrid, but can they keep Real Madrid out at the other side? You're right, defensively, Konate makes an enormous difference compared to Matip or Gomez, not just in the defensive solidity, but I think also in the way that Alexander-Arnold seems to feel a bit more confidence in being able to get forward if Konate is alongside him. But Liverpool at the best, we know, are absolutely devastating. There hasn't been enough of it for them this season. Does that result kick them on over the next month, where they play Real Madrid, where they play Manchester City, where they play Arsenal, Chelsea, and they go on the sort of run they've gone on before? Still wouldn't be fully convinced, but you're right. A 3, when you need 3, if you can get 1, you can kind of get the second at any time, because you just set yourself up for a frantic finale, and then you somehow nick the third and send it to extra time. It's just still not convinced they can hold out Real Madrid without scoring for 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's a tall ask.
It's going to be fun, I think.
It's giving them hope, at least.
Definitely to get the first goal. I remember Ger, I've been on with Ger on, it must have been one of the OTB AMs, where he said Liverpool are totally out of the Champions League race now, and all of a sudden they're far from it. They're actually in a great position if they keep playing as they are. I don't know. You look at the stats of that game and you're like, how did that happen? It just they're
only 7 points off Manchester United, and that is nothing when you look at 13 games left, is it?
And Newcastle's form for me as well, they're just not scoring enough goals at the moment.
Spurs are Spurs.
Liverpool probably out of the Champions League after that's one more concern out of the way after the Madrid game.
They do have a tough run of games, as I said, so they need to try and keep the momentum going. Newcastle, as you say, they're starting to concede a few more. They've had a couple of injuries. Wilson has gone off form. Isak has struggled to get himself fully fit and into the side. So they're looking a little bit more fallible right now. Tottenham haven't been able to put together a run of results all season. So it's there. But this is always the race for 4th place. It's always this slow bike race where it's made up of 3 teams who are struggling for a bit of form. It's never, I can't remember a time when the team who's finished 4th has been in the title race right up to the last month of the season and it's just suddenly dropped off. It's always this scrap between the bigger teams who are out of form, and maybe another side throws themselves into the mix as well. But Liverpool, the one thing they have in their favour is their history of closing out seasons very, very well. It did feel a couple of years ago when Alisson scored that goal that it was even a more desperate situation where it felt like they were completely done, and they still managed to grind out enough results to just about get themselves over the line. They've won the important games in the scrap for the top 4. They've beaten Newcastle twice. They were the only side to have beaten Newcastle in the Premier League, so that suddenly is a massive swing there. Let's see what happens when they have to play the rest of the teams above them over the next month. But right now I'd imagine bookies boys, I'd imagine they're probably favourites to finish in the top 4.
Yeah, some big fixtures, as you say, Nathan, coming up for them across the next month before and after the international break. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now at 7:51 AM. Keep your comments, by the way, coming in on the YouTube stream. Just a couple of them for you. Jim Sullivan, haha, loving the deluded Liverpool fanboys. I don't think that's it at all. I think if you beat your closest rival 7-0, understandably, you start to believe that you can reverse a 3-0 deficit in the Champions League. I think that's fairly normal. More comments as well. Any mention from Shifty Lad of the retake and penalty? Yeah, we did discuss it. Cullen's here asking me in the chat, what way did I put my penalties? Or do I put my penalties? I up the keeper, not quite Ivan Toney-esque, and act as if I'm going to put it to my right, and usually send with your eyes the keeper to that.
You're left-footed, aren't you?
I'm right-footed.
Oh, you're right-footed, sorry.
You usually kick with both, but humble brag. But put it to my left, hopefully send the keeper the wrong way. So you're putting it across yourself, which I always find is more risky, because you feel like you can quite easily put it into the bottom right if you're right footed.
Our producer just made the point. You've just told everyone your secret now, so you've kind of given it away.
It's a fair point.
Yeah,
I never thought of that.
Monaghan Town.
Well, it'll make it even more
Quality is so good.
Yeah,
Quality
exactly.
is so good. You just can't save them.
There's just no stopping it. Yeah. Put it right in the corner, lads.
Don't save those.
Chocolate Rain says Havertz was sensational last night. Great name as well, by the way. League of Ireland, lads, was a bit of action on Monday night. Shamrock Rovers. I mean, we were kind of talking to Chris Medland on the Formula 1 yesterday and how Max Verstappen pulled away in the first race of the season, and already you're thinking, this is going to be a procession again. They're going to go on and win it. Shamrock Rovers losing has ironically added a little bit of interest and intrigue. They're not going to necessarily run away with the league this year, Johnny.
They lost to Derry, but that in itself wasn't a major surprise, and Derry don't have quite as many players out in key positions at the moment. And I honestly thought, I was at the Galway United game in Waterford, came back, and it was 12 o'clock. I said, I'll throw on some of the Derry Rovers game anyway. And I watched the whole lot. I honestly thought it was such a good, such quality in the game. Really good passages of play in midfield. And I was like, okay, Shamrock Rovers deserve to get a draw there. Nothing to worry about, the players coming back. But then they conceded 4 at home to Cork City, and it could have been 6. And with all due respect to Cork City, they're a team that got promoted. They wouldn't be absolutely blessed with attacking quality at this level. And, Stephen Bradley saying they could have conceded 6. They again showed their battling qualities by coming back from 2 goals down with 6-7 minutes to go. But now they go to Talca Park on Friday, and you're like, how many more points can they drop here without it being a bit of an issue? Because I don't know what Nathan thinks, and I know Nathan goes to quite a lot of Rovers games. I'd say Gary O'Neill not playing in midfield is a big issue for them. Pico Lopez getting sent off in the first game could be the difference in them winning and losing the league at the moment, because they've lost so many points on Derry. But I don't know what you made of the game, Nathan, on Friday. I think whatever about the results of the weekend, the backdrop of Tala, the quality of the pitch as well, that it wasn't played on AstroTurf, it was played on proper grass pitch in Dublin, and a nice night, full house, and just the goals, the whole package for me was exactly where the League of Ireland needs to be.
Yeah, it felt big. Even though we were only 3 games into the season, it felt very big with the fact that you had over 7,500 people there. The quality of the football was really good, even though you felt both sides have still quite a bit to go as to where they'd exactly want to get to. Rovers had their 3 first-choice centre-backs suspended. It wasn't just Pico Lopez, obviously. Cleary had been sent off. Grace had been sent off in the previous game, so they were missing all of them. And you're right, the Gary O'Neill one is interesting. So they obviously feel Gary O'Neill, one of the best midfielders in the league, was the right man to play in the heart of the defence. He played there again on Monday night, even with 2 of the centre-backs returning. They obviously felt he could give them a bit of control at the back, but you lose so much from the midfield by putting him back there. I wonder, was it worth the sacrifice that actually not having him there to run the show took so much away from Rovers against the team that are almost their equal in terms of challenging for the title this season in Derry. So yeah, I thought Rovers played very well in the first half on Friday night, and probably should have had a couple more goals, didn't take their chances. Derry hadn't shown up massively in the first 45, but second 45 it changed completely, and Derry were totally on top and fully deserved to win that second half. Monday night's game is one of the craziest games I've ever seen against Cork City. Finished 4-4. There were 33 shots for Shamrock Rovers and 12 for Cork, so 45 shots across the game. Rovers hit 17 corner kicks, and every single one of them nearly resulted in a goal. Cork were an absolute mess at the back, and if you haven't seen Rory Gaffney's first goal, which he took unbelievably well when he dribbles through a couple of players inside the penalty area, but Cork must have had 4 different opportunities to clear the ball and didn't do it, and that happened countless times. And the worry for Stephen Bradley is, you look at the defending, and maybe Shamrock Rovers' defending was worse than Cork City's. Yeah. You say Cork came to play, they didn't come until, I say Colin Healy's very frustrated with the last 10 or 15 minutes, in that they just sat back so much and they couldn't get out of their own penalty area, and they invited Rovers onto them. And even at 4-2 down, the way Rovers responded to conceding the 4th and how quickly they started creating chances, you thought that they could win this. They could easily score 3 goals quite quickly. They were creating so many opportunities. But they were all over the place. At the back, they were getting at each other. Cleary and Jack Byrne were having a right go at each other after the concession of the fourth goal. They seemed to struggle, I think, maybe for a bit of pace in midfield, Rovers, so they were being caught out on the counter-attack. We saw that against Derry, obviously, as well on Friday night, that they were pushing so many players up that when they were losing possession, they weren't able to get back quick enough. So they're in a difficult enough spot in terms of points-wise. They can't let Derry get that lead and let it build up too much. And the Rovers didn't start last season particularly well in terms of performances, but they were so good.
They're not conceding 4 goals at home, Nathan.
No, they're not.
That was a
fortress. They conceded 10
fortress.
goals at home all last season. They hadn't lost a game before Friday night in, about 18 months at Tallaght Stadium in the league. So they have been consistently top class at home. But there's something just a little bit off. But the other thing that they were brilliant at, and the mark of all champions, is they could always grind out a result.
Yeah.
So they, even if they weren't at their best over the last couple of years, like how many late goals did they score to win games? You think of the goal from Rory Gaffney against Shells, where they're 2-1 down with 5 minutes to go, and they managed to win the game 3-2, and that probably wins them the title in the end. They're giving themselves too much to do at the moment, and I didn't feel they were really going to come back and get something from that Derry game. They didn't offer a huge amount in the second half.
That's a bit harsh. They were. I think that's a bit harsh. And in fairness, I think they were worthy of a point. I mean, Derry sort of sat in.
I thought in the first half they were the better team, but I thought in the second half Derry deserved to win that game.
Yeah. I just want. I've made the point about the managers in the league, and even Colin Healy. You think of the career Colin Healy had. He's the Cork manager, and he won't be happy with Nathan mentioned all the defending, and the bad defender or whatever, but you've all these really good minds now managing teams where week to week, the fixture list on Friday night upcoming, Damien Duff is tasked with Shamrock Rovers coming to Talca. Dundalk go to Derry, so Rory Higgins and Stephen O'Donnell will be very good friends, but now they're obviously rivals. And I remember asking one of them, do you text each other much anymore? Well, it goes, not about football anyway. So they don't, they would have literally been at Dundalk together, probably the best of pals, and now they're rivals, so they don't talk football anymore, really.
Yeah.
And Dundalk have had 2 great wins on the bounce. They go to Derry. I can't remember who Pats are playing Friday, but it's...
Tell you in a second.
Yeah, it's a really big game for Pats, and it's a kind of a hard one to call, because all of a sudden Pats fans are already giving out that they've had 2 abject performances, really. Lost to Sligo with 11v10 for 70 minutes. Gave away an awful goal for the second.
Pats are home to Bows.
So Bows have 9 points out of 12. That's sold out straight away. Derry and Dundalk is sold out. Rovers and Shells will be sold out. And this momentum that the league has, and these really, really compelling games week to week, even Drogheda punching above their weight. I don't know, Nathan. I've never experienced anything remotely like this in terms of this sustained buzz, quality, and just so many talking points as well.
Yeah, there seems to be not a big gap between an awful lot of the teams. So you have Derry and Rovers out in front, but then behind that, it feels like they can all beat each other. And again, that line of you never want to be the one team in crisis. Pats suddenly find themselves in that position. They took an almighty hammering against Dundalk. Suddenly Tim Clancy finds himself under a bit of pressure. But you win at home against Bows on Friday night, and suddenly Bows good start. People start questioning that. So there's a quality to the football. As you say, the games consistently are sold out. We need to get to a stage where actually you can get more people into these grounds so that they're not selling out as quickly, so that you can capitalise on the interest levels that are there. But Friday night at Talca Park now is massive for Rovers. Rovers' next 2 games now are against Shells, and then they play Pats at home on Paddy's Day. These are not easy games. Tough Dublin derbies. They haven't had a Dublin derby so far this season. Going to Shells, you know what Duff's going to do. It's going to be tight. It's going to be dour. He's going to make it as difficult as possible. Be an absolute bloody nuisance.
It's going to be dour. Did Duff not say they were going to dominate the ball and all that?
Well, let's see if they can dominate the ball on Friday night.
In fairness, they're really well coached, Nathan. In fairness, but he's quite pragmatic.
Yeah.
Well, and that's fair. I think Vinnie Perth was on yesterday morning making that point. Duff's problem is that he might face this season is the expectations are so high from outside of football, almost outside of the League of Ireland, on him because of his name, and people will be looking at Shell's results and going, well, why aren't they further up the table if they find themselves sort of in that 6th, 7th spot? But that's quality-wise probably where they should be this season. So, his job on Friday night is not to go and play total football against Shamrock Rovers. His job is to get himself a result and pick up a point, even if that's a good result. But the worry for Rovers is that this lead becomes they can't let it get into double figures at this time of the season. Now, if you're neutral, it's brilliant. It's exactly what you want them, trying to chase down Derry over the next 3 or 4 or 5 months.
Well, Nathan, the first game of the season was the first game of the season, right? Derry didn't have Diallo, didn't have Duffy, didn't have Dummigan, and McElhenney came off the bench. So, that's an outstanding midfield. 4 players who weren't playing, and they still have McJanet coming back. You're just looking like I'm not sure where they're going to drop points. Or McGonigal's in form as well, and they really do have squad depth. I think Rory Higgins has signed really well, and I don't know. It's going to be tough for Rovers.
Yeah, Diallo looked very good on Friday night in midfield. They really struggled to cope with him at times. Ollie O'Neill obviously scored the last night. I thought he was quiet in the game on Friday night, but he
to do defensive work. Yeah,
exactly. Probably not the side of the game he wants to be really focusing on. But he looks a good signing as well. Bringing him in from Fulham on loan. We saw what he could do with the Irish under-21s. But everyone was expecting Derry to come this season, weren't they? This is what we thought would happen. That Derry were going to be a lot stronger. Rovers have lost Andy Lyons. Think of the amount of goals Andy Lyons scored in the first quarter of last season for Shamrock Rovers. He was, first couple of games maybe took a little while to settle, but they've lost Lyons, they've lost Mandreu, and have they brought in players who've settled that quickly to replace them? We're going to try. And first, Trevor Clark, that was very good over the last couple of games. It's going to be interesting to see with Johnny Kenny. They played Gaffney and Kenny up front together. There's no doubt of Kenny's finishing ability, but he's probably a little bit different. A very different player to Rory Gaffney, who every time he's on the pitch looks head and shoulders above everybody else in terms of his physicality and how he can just basically run the show up top on his own. Kenny, from what we've seen, wants to play a little bit more on the shoulder so far. So do the two of them play together all the time, or is it one or the other? When they're playing, away from home against Shells on Friday night.
Yeah, adds a bit of interest for sure. So Derry Dundalk, Shelburne Rovers on Friday night at Talca Park. You've got Pats Bows and UCD against Drogheda, and then the Saturday game is Sligo Rovers versus Cork City. Nathan, pleasure as always. Thanks for hopping on this morning.
Cheers, lads.
Great stuff at 8:03 a.m. on this morning's OTB AM. Up next, we've got Nora Stapleton and Benny Cullen from Sport Ireland, talking female sporting participation among teenagers. We've got plenty more coming up as well, including Jasmine Baba with tactical analysis breakdown of Chelsea Dortmund last night and Arsenal from the weekend gone by as well. We'll give them a little bit of love. Seán O'Brien, the former Irish international rugby star and Leinster and Lions player, of course, as well, will join us later on in the show too. During the next ad break, you will hear a clip from the latest episode of the Football Pod, where Paddy, James and Tommy discussed Derry's dramatic win over Dublin. The Football Pod in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Check out #TheToughest for more. Back in a sec.
You're listening to OTB AM.
Off the ball.
Chow time, Joe, matters. Chow time matters, let me tell you that.
But you always see pizza in a dressing room afterwards. Still, is pizza that much better than fish and chips?
No, that's what I'm saying. Fish, a bit of cod. How shebang like?
Well,
fresh cod. Fresh cod.
Did you have batter on your cod? By any chance?
Fresh cod.
Oh man, you're actually making me hungry here. I haven't had dinner.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
From Derry, it was just so passive.
Yeah.
And they were in awe of Dublin. That was the reality of it.
It was.
We could see it was a big game for them. And the first half, I tweeted this, and it was Derry were playing Dublin at the style of play that Dublin mastered 5 or 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if you play that cat and mouse game against Dublin, they are the best team in the country at that. And if you sit back and allow Dublin to keep the ball and attack and try and attack the same way Dublin do, you're not going to do it as well as them. And Dublin are still the best team in the country at that. And that's a brilliant thing to have in the locker. What Derry changed at half time was they just threw caution to the wind. This Dublin team struggle massively when teams are direct against them. I don't think they're adapting enough in games. That if you see that, like Conor Callaghan is, for me, one of the top forwards in the game. I think that's clear. We're in agreement on that. He's nearly too honest in a way. He's so selfless in his play. He spends the majority of his game back in Dublin's half. If I'm Derry, I want him out there. I don't want him inside our 21. And if you see Dublin are 5 points up, Derry's have to come out. So now there's space in the Derry full back line. Why not, Con, go inside for 15 minutes here? We're gonna try and kick 3 or 4 balls into you. Just make tweaks and adapt to the game that's happening in front of you. But Dublin just kept doing the same thing, and they nearly got away with it. Dublin, they're so programmed to play this controlled game which I say is really good against certain opposition, but you need variety in it. Derry played into their hands in the first half. In the second half, without even kicking the ball, they just went completely direct. Conor Doherty, McKinless's introduction, and I think the absolute epitome of what changed with Derry is Brendan Rodgers. First half of that game, he's man-marking Brian Fenton, and he's afraid. He's going out thinking, I have to try and contain Fenton. And Fenton absolutely lords it over him. Second half, Derry say, no, we're going to lead the play in the front foot. This is not working for us. And Brendan Rodgers, the exact same. He forgets about Fenton and puts the head down. He goes, I'm driving forward at every opportunity. His performance epitomised the change from Derry in the first half to the second half. You got the sense they came into that game nearly wondering were they good enough to beat Dublin. And they've answered the question there themselves. And I'm really hoping from Dublin's perspective, it's a big moment for them as well.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Yeah, approaching 8 minutes past 8 on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM, and it is International Women's Day. I did mention at the top of the show this morning we wanted to talk female participation in sport, some concerning levels and dropout rates, and I guess we want to discuss ways in which we can keep young girls involved in physical activity and sport in Ireland, especially. So delighted to be joined on the show this morning by Nora Stapleton, the former Irish international rugby player who is now the Women in Sport lead with Sport Ireland, and Benny Cullen, the Director of Research and Innovation at Sport Ireland as well. Good morning to you both. Thanks a million for taking the call from us this morning. I might start with you, Nora. Some of these figures are quite concerning. One of them in front of me. Participation plummeting during adolescence. 7% of girls aged 14 to 15 getting the recommended physical activity levels. It is a bit of a worry, isn't it?
It is, but I guess that's why, myself and Benny and others are working hard to try and use the research to work on what we can implement to change that trend. I think the stats that you read out there are probably from the Children's Sports Participation and Physical Activity Study, and Benny might mention that there's a new version of that coming out shortly where we might see some of those changes, but we know that teenage girls participate less in sport than boys. That's reality. It has been for a long time now. We know that females across age groups, not all age groups, in some, maybe the latter years, more women than men are active, but Benny can speak to that. But the work that we're doing, and the reason why I guess I'm in the role and why we have a Sport Ireland policy on women in sport is because we know that interventions are required and ways or funding, etc., that we can try and encourage, that we can motivate, and that we can create programs that teenage girls and others want to take part in. And that's today, we might hopefully talk about it. We're launching a new campaign called Her Moves, which we're really excited about, and that is targeting teenage girls and those who are important in their lives in a way to try and encourage and motivate them to be more active. So look, hopefully going forward we might start to change some of these trends, but certainly yes, they do participate less than boys, and it is an area that we need to focus on.
I guess one of the reasons, Nora, for dropout rates being so high is sport maybe being seen as quote unquote unfeminine or uncool for young girls in their adolescent years. Is that something that's changing with the I guess rise of so many female role models in Irish sport? You've got the women's team heading to the World Cup, you've got Katie Taylor, Kelly Harrington, Leona Maguire. It just seems to be heading in the right direction, and surely those role models can only help.
The role models are definitely doing, they're amazing, and we have some women's sport, and particularly at a high performance level, our female athletes are doing just superbly well, and it's great to see. For teenage girls, look, they're going through so many changes, and being a teenager today is hard, and that's what they're telling us. Is it uncool? It mightn't be so much that it's uncool, it's more that they look too deeply at their own performance within the sport, or if they don't feel like they fit, or if they don't feel like they're good enough to be there, then it's easier for them to drop out than to try and stay up with maybe the performance level that's been demanded of them. So, we're looking at competition structures, for example, that can lead to girls being deselected from teams, or trying to hit certain markers or certain times. And if girls aren't reaching those milestones, they fall away from it. There seems to be no place for those that just love to run, love to swim when they can, as opposed to being the demands put on them to train as often as they can, or the way maybe our team sports are set up, you have to go training twice a week and you play a match the weekend, and that's where you play. And then if you don't get picked for that, where do you go? So these girls are telling us, like, look, we want to be, we love sport. They really do. They see the benefits of sports. Like, we shouldn't be telling them, oh, you must be play sports in order to be healthy, because they know all that. What we're trying to do now is reframe what sport looks like. We're trying to kind of change those kind of moments of pride, and take that away, that it's not all about winning, that you can have these other achievements and moments of pride within sport. But most importantly, we're trying to give the girls a voice in all this. So a lot of the research that we've done, we've spoken to teenage girls, consulted with them, so their voice is very much embedded in it, and they're telling us they want more adventure, they want to try more sports that they would never normally get to try, they want to do more stuff outside, and they want to nearly even mix in their own hobbies and behaviours within that as well. So we're encouraged in sports to bring in music, bring in art, drama, whatever it is, because the girls are saying to us, like, look, we're not just going to leave all our other interests behind and just play sports. We want to see that we're able to merge the two together as well. So it's, doing things a little bit differently. But back to the role models, like, they are so important and they're amazing. But those role models will inspire the next generation of elite athletes, or those girls who are, striving to be their best. The role models won't have as big an impact on the girls who are falling out of sport because they just don't love it anymore. And those girls, the ones that are inactive, are saying to us, look, I've heard of Katie Taylor, never seen her box, which is devastating for us from Sport Ireland. But unfortunately, there's a whole pile of girls out there that don't relate to our high achieving role models, and so we need to find other ways to engage them.
There is probably challenges, Nora, like for even boys and girls, for coaches to recognise the players that are either on the periphery or not getting game time, to really maximise their enjoyment and to make them feel that it's worthwhile, and to make them value their own worth, because that's probably, I guess that is a concern, where it's sad just to see people fall away that maybe don't realise their potential when there is latent potential there.
Yeah, 100%, you're right. And coaches play a key role, and isn't it so unfair of us to put like all this responsibility on coaches? I've coached, and I know the difficulties that can exist when you're trying to look at one cohort who really want to win the upcoming match, and then you're looking at the longer picture of like, well, you're only 14. If I can get you through these teenage years and where you're hitting 18 and everybody's enjoyed it, everybody's improved, everybody feels like they're improving, they're learning new skills, then you've a much greater chance that they will continue to be active in later years as well. We've created a workshop called Coaching Teenage Girls in Sport, which is directed at coaches. And the whole idea is to help that coach construct an environment that's built around their athletes or players, to ensure that everyone is kind of getting more from that and they're enjoying it. We talk about menstrual cycle there. We talk about what does fun mean within your training session, and it doesn't need to be, the maybe games that we thought, well, we only used to do those with the under sixes. It's not about that, but you can bring fun into your training session, and then it's the language that you use with the teenage girls is so important as well. So those Coaching Teenage Girls workshops have really taken off. We've run over 100 of them this year already. The local sports partnerships and the national governing bodies of sports would run those for their sports or for the community, and we're seeing over 1,000 coaches already go through that. And even so much so, Benny's unit and actually evaluated the course with the Camogie Association, and they went and they spoke to the coaches when they went back to the clubs to find out, well, what changes are you making within your Camogie club? And it was just amazing to hear the stories that were coming back, where they included the girls more in this, what they should be training on or what the session should look like, where they included the girls and like, look, we want to do trips away. What does that look like? Bring them to Camogie matches, bringing them to other things where it's just about giving the girls a chance to be together and to bond as a team. So there's loads in this, and the coaches do have a huge part. The Her Moves campaign, which we're releasing, is targeting teenage girls, but I also said it was targeting that cohort around teenage girls who are important, and coaches are a big factor of that. So we see it as, with this campaign, how can we give coaches more tips guidelines and just more information as to how they can retain those girls within their training group.
And Benny, as Nora says, the numbers are thankfully starting to head in the right direction in terms of young girls' participation in sport in this country. One thing that struck me was the difference in the urban and rural divide, that how, you know, it might be easier for a young girl to stay involved with sport in a rural community, maybe because they stick to a certain limited number of the traditional sports as such. So that's quite a fascinating aspect to all this as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and good morning, guys. Good to be here with you this morning. What we see really in the data is, you know, unique experiences for every individual girl, and then them kind of being grouped into kind of cohorts of the population across both urban and rural divide, but also socioeconomic status and ethnic background and things like that. So the experience is different for very different groups of girls. A piece of work we did with Nora in the teenage girls research was to build personas of different types of girls who are living in different areas and what their experience is, so that we could really try and identify with what those girls are going through and the opportunities that are available to them and the challenges that they have. And so you're dead right, you know, depending on the community they're in and the background that they're from, the opportunities that are available to them are very different. One of the heartening things we start to see coming out of the data is, you know, small shifts in behaviour which tend to be going in the right direction, albeit, especially for teenage girls, they're starting from quite a low bar. But we start to see some structural shifts which are really interesting. So girls are reporting a broader diversity of sporting opportunity, which we know is one of the things that they're feeding back to us in the focus groups. You know, that they want multiple sports that they can try through those teenage years, experiment with, get different experiences. And we'd often use the term, you know, there's a sport for everyone out there. You know, so if the first one isn't for you, you know, don't give up, keep going. And it's up to society, it's up to Sport Ireland, national governing bodies, coaches, to ensure that those girls are being handed on, you know, that they're getting that broad diversity of experience. So we start to see that coming out through the data, and so that's quite heartening.
It's interesting as well, Benny. Like I even noticed on Nora's Twitter, I think she had shared one of the sports social ball. So this is a lovely idea to kind of re-engage young girls in a sport like basketball, but it's less competitive, and it's a model I think that would keep young girls involved. So the focus being on fun, which sounds like an obvious thing to say, and a clear, obvious way to keep young girls involved, but implementing methods to keep young girls involved in big sports and the main sports in this country, but making it more fun is probably one of the more obvious solutions here.
Yeah, I think so. And Johnny was touching on it there earlier on. I think a lot of the challenges that teenage girls are facing, teenage boys are, you know, facing some of them as well. But that space of social participation is quite interesting, and we see it, you know, we see it at macro scale in the data. We've pretty much parity of participation in primary school, not a million miles off it. And then in the teenage years, the girls really start to drop out much earlier than the boys. The boys do drop out later on. So we're in here scratching our heads, you know, in terms of policy and strategy that could maybe help to address that. And I think this idea of social participation is a big, big driver, especially in teenage girls. And I think some of the models that we tend to come at with sport, some of the language we've started to use here in the office, is we have this competition by default model of sport. As kids transition from primary school to secondary school, if you're going to play one of the big sports, the default is you're playing to compete. And what we notice, when we do these focus groups and individual interviews with teenagers, we see is, that there are less and less of them interested in that competition by default in that transitionary period. Largely due to the fact that they all mature at different levels, and so having competition as an option. So opt into competition. If you want to compete, you compete, but having a recreational option, almost a recreation by default, so you keep everybody involved, and that serves both the participation agenda. It should help to address this teenage dropout that we see. It's not a silver bullet, but I think it could be a component. But as well, it should help the pathway issues that we see in Irish sport and the high performance end, because the more people you can keep involved, the more chance you have of identifying talent, maybe just because people happen to mature a little bit later, go through puberty a bit later. Maybe it's 15, 16, 17 by the time they really start to gain the work ethic, the physical and psychological competencies to be able to perform. And so if it's competition by default at 12, 13, 14, maybe you lose them there, you know. So starting to see sports like basketball, and there are others, GAA and soccer, who are building these kind of recreational models of sport that run in parallel to the competitive element. And Nora mentioned the work we did with Camogie on the coaching workshop. And one really big thing that came out of the Camogie work was that the girls who were playing Camogie, they loved competing. That was a big motivation for them. So there are a heap of teenage girls out there who really want to compete. So it's not a question of, you know, oh, we don't need the competition version, we just need the recreational version. It's more of, it's the idea is to try and have these dual pathways that work alongside each other, so that those who want to compete can get in there, take part, and those who want to play for recreation don't feel ostracized. You know, they're part of the same family, they're part of the same community.
I guess as well, Benny, a lot of kids at that age, they're going to be developing addiction to their phone anyway, for one thing. And this is, you know, how much is on the schools then to say, well, we really have to provide a few hours a week here to students to do physical exercise as much as anything, get away from their phone, get outside, do something, or, you know, is that asking too much of the schools?
Yeah, like we do a good bit of work with the Department of Education. We do a good bit of work with active school flags. Schools are chock-a-block busy, but they play their role. So, you know, and the approach we tend to take at it is, you know, what we call a systems approach or a whole society approach, where we go, okay, everybody's got a role to play here, to try and ensure the kids stay active, and from our end that they start and maintain sports participation, especially teenage girls. So you've got, you know, community sport, you've got school sport, extracurricular sport in school, you've got PE, the kind of curriculum element of being physically active, you've got elements of active travel and infrastructure that's there. But also, you know, local authorities play a huge role in this, and we're working with them to develop local sports plans to improve the sporting infrastructure that's available. We were having a good chat earlier on with another colleague. Like back in the day, I know I grew up in the 80s, we used to play curbs and heads and volleys with, you know, jumpers out in the park. I think a child's, especially a teenager's, expectation of what sporting infrastructure should be and what the experience should be maybe means that, you know, that idea of doing curbs and playing around jumpers just doesn't meet their expectation of what society should look like nowadays. And so we're having great conversations with some of the local authorities about, you know, building small scale sporting infrastructure, get the kids back out in the parks, but they won't play the way we used to play in the 80s. So it's trying to update the infrastructure in that space. So it's to answer your question there, Johnny, you know, you can't lump it all on the schools. It's everybody's got to play their part here and it's trying to coordinate that action to address especially this dropout of teenage girls. Just to kind of, you know, comment on some of the work that Nora's doing. This teenage girl space is critical in terms of national sports policy. So what we see is, you know, good parity of participation in primary school. We're not far off that. And then we get this big drop off in the teenage years, especially amongst girls. And it takes, you know, 2 or 3 decades for that gap to catch back up again. And for women, when they get a little bit older, start participating in sport, physical activity to the same rate as men. So if we can reduce that gap in the teenage years, the national sports policy has this ambition of parity of participation across both genders. That teenage gap is critical to achieving that. So the kind of work that Nora's doing with the national governing bodies of sport, some of the initiatives that you mentioned there, Seán, that's a real critical focus for national sports policy.
Final word to you, Nora. And look, I know I'm kind of lumping the phrase teenage girls out there. There are girls who are at different levels of engagement. You know, some could be engaged in sport a little bit and maybe fell away from it. Some might be completely disinterested completely. So I just wanted to make that point as well, that not every teenage girl is in the same boat here. But that point that Benny makes as well about having the infrastructure and just awareness for young girls as well, that there are options for different sports out there and that they're not all competitive, is so important as well.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what this new campaign is about, Her Move. So anybody listening, I encourage you to pick up your phone and have a look on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. It'll be the first time that Sport Ireland will be on TikTok, and Her Moves is the channel that we'll be using there, because look, let's face it, that's where the girls are and we want to speak to them. The campaign is about introducing new activities, new opportunities, and really opening their eyes to what's there, away from maybe some of the sports that they would normally normally be introduced to in school or in the community. You mentioned basketball and socio-ball, and that's when Basketball Ireland first set up, that it was targeting adults and encouraging adults to get back and just play basketball. I've been to a few sessions myself. It's really good fun, because what I want to do, I just want to go, I want to play basketball, I want to feel like I've maybe got a bit of a fitness hit, and I'm probably not scoring some hoops, but I'm certainly trying. But they're now using that for the teenage age bracket, so they're bringing that in as one of their Her Moves programs. And we've a couple of other sports that are kind of the early adopters to this as well. So you'll see table tennis, they're doing ping pong art, so that's where I mentioned this, merging of sport and other activities. Tennis Ireland are doing serve swap, so they're bringing in a kind of sustainability element to what they're doing, just getting girls playing tennis, but they're also going to teach them to upcycle their clothes, etc. And we've got loads more, and there's lots of NGBs as well that will come on board. Really, it's about starting it, and I might just mention one of the local sports partnerships in Sligo. They're doing this amazing program where it's a surfing program, but it's actually also teaching the girls to teach others. Like they're doing a kind of inclusive workshop where the girls will then teach other kids how to surf. They'll also do beach cleanups and things like that. So it's really, these programs are bringing much more to the program than just sport. And eventually, as we build our website, the hermoves.ie website, we'll have all these opportunities on there. So a girl can go on, or her parent, our guardian, our teacher, our coach can go onto the website and see some of these other opportunities that exist. And we know that there won't be a program for every single girl in Ireland. It's more about inspiring and encouraging them to try some of these other sports that they might not have thought to try before. So we're really excited about it, and it's great to be able to share today and to talk just about this, this whole area of teenage girls dropout, and that as Benny said, it is a systems-wide approach. Everybody's responsible, and certainly that's what we're trying to do here in Sport Ireland, to bring everyone on board through a campaign such as Her Moves.
Absolutely. hermoves.ie, as Nora said, on International Women's Day. What better day to go and check it out? Nora, Benny, thanks a million for your time this morning.
Thanks so much. It's been great.
Brilliant stuff there. That is Nora Stapleton, the former Irish international rugby player, who is now the Women in Sport lead with Sport Ireland, and Benny Cullen, the Director of Research and Innovation at Sport Ireland, at 8:28 a.m. on this Wednesday morning's OTBAM. I keep forgetting the day. We've got loads of comments coming in on YouTube. Brian says, Johnny is right. Watts is very suspect defensively for Rovers. They're far too open when the opposition counter.
He's not a defensive player, Dylan. He was caught out of the first goal was vital on Friday in that Trevor Clark missed the ball then, and then when Doherty goes through, Watts just doesn't, he's not quick, he doesn't have the pace to deal with them, but that's not Dylan's game, to be fair. I thought he played well in general. I think he's grown into the season, but Gary O'Neill they've so many flashy players in midfield. They need a holding midfielder to help the others.
Bobby Dwyer, Liverpool beat Man United 5-0 last season and 7-0 this season. United are united. I don't think he appreciated the Spurs are Spurs comment earlier this morning, as a good Tottenham fan is Bob.
Like in the middle of all this, Liverpool concede 5 goals against Real Madrid at home after being 2-0 up, and then have 5 games in the league where they don't concede at all.
Football's mad, isn't it?
It's just, you can't, I don't know, there's nothing made any sense about that game on Sunday, but there you go.
You just can't predict any of this. Joining us to maybe comb through some of the football and try to make sense of it all, back on the show. A show regular now, I think we can call her, Jasmine Baba, football analyst. Good morning, Jasmine. How are things?
Yeah, all right. A little bit deflated after last night's match, but what can you do?
Yeah, I know you follow Borussia Dortmund very closely, so a disappointing one for you. The atmosphere looked great in Stamford Bridge. Chelsea 2, Dortmund 0. We might come through some of the action. I guess Adeyemi being out and other players being out for Dortmund caught up with them last night, and they didn't have that same pace on the counter that they did over in Germany.
Yeah, I think that was the main issue with Dortmund last night, and I think it was further deflated with that early Julian Brandt injury, who has been on top of his game recently. Especially, he's been the fastest he's ever been. He's been the most direct he's ever been. He has such a clinical, talented finish, can create something out of nothing in those kind of big games as well. For him to get injured so early really knocked the stride out of Dortmund, and to be left without any of those types of players, like we've seen Yusuf Moukoko, Karim Adeyemi, who obviously scored in the first leg from that quick attack. they were left without something that they haven't had for like quite a while. They've been better with more possession, Edin Terzic's team, but they still rely sometimes on those quick breaks. And basically Chelsea became that more of that team. And Dortmund didn't really know how to cover that. They were quite surprised by how quick Chelsea were, the way that they won second balls and could quickly progress, kind of like an onslaught at times in that first half. And ultimately, it got the best of Borussia Dortmund.
The markets beforehand, Jasmine, were so heavy on a Chelsea victory. Now, why is that? What's comparable between the two leagues here?
I'm not sure if that would have been correct. I mean, obviously, it was correct on the night Chelsea did win, but I think it's just more of the experience, the kind of quality of players, the injuries Dortmund had in terms of squad depth after that first kind of layer of squad of Borussia Dortmund. You don't have this same kind of quality that Chelsea obviously does. And someone more experienced in the Champions League like Chelsea, I think the home advantage, it's going to pile up for those markets to be more Chelsea-centred more than Dortmund-centred. And ultimately, it was right. I don't think Chelsea were the best team in the world. I still don't like how they play in the league.
How do you mean by that?
Their 3-4-3 is still a lot like Tuchel's 3-4-3, and I think especially bigger teams like Chelsea, like Liverpool, in bigger games where it comes to the moment of death, the moment of truth, players can rely on themselves more, and it doesn't really matter so much about the tactics that maybe the coach gives them. They will get themselves up for those bigger matches and then lose themselves in, the matches against Brighton, Southampton, etc. So those are probably a few of the reasons why Chelsea did so well and were predicted to go through and to win.
Yeah, it was funny on the TV last night. Owen Hargreaves after the match just saying Dortmund not there in the big moments. Like, I guess as a former Bayern Munich player, he was throwing some shots out there as well just to get the dig in. That press that you mentioned, Jasmine, I mean, it was a serious flurry of pressing from Chelsea at times, and it clearly paid off. Kai Havertz's role in all this was crucial.
Yep, I think I can see why there's always criticism about Kai Havertz, especially in England, but he is still and was one of the best players and one of the best young players in the German league, and has so much talent, so much technical ability. I don't think people give him enough credit at times. He was built to be in that kind of pressing, quick attack team, and also just knows how to read the man, knows how to run at the man. And in a proper team, he can completely be enabled and can flourish. And it's finding that right role for him and letting him progress. How old is he? He's still 22. He moved so young from the leagues. And he's just got so much ability that he can, and obviously he knows the German team. So I always like playing players from a team who knows the other team well, a bit like when Hummels played against Man City to face Haaland. People that they were experienced with, I always like that. And Kai Havertz also showed that experience of what Dortmund's weaknesses could be and taking advantage of that. So yeah, I think people don't give him enough credit. Last night he was by far.
Oh, I forgot Jasmine lost there just for a second. It was interesting, Johnny, that whole pressing, because it clearly works. I mean, the discussion has been similar around Manchester United and Wout Weghorst and whether or not that's working, but with Chelsea last night, Potter had to get it right. It felt like the biggest game of the season for them. You could say that at this stage of the season, every game is the biggest game of the season.
Well, they're probably out of the, they may make Europe, but like realistically, this is where they're at. And they got it right. I mean, Dortmund missed some very good chances as well, you got to say. Like Dortmund, you're riding your luck a little bit at times. You had a second penalty that's again, Havertz didn't know that there was encroaching behind him. So, you get that bit of luck. But the press, I did find in transition, Chelsea have quick players. Like, so if you play high up and you press and you win the ball back, Dortmund did look vulnerable, as Jasmine says. And it was a really tactically fascinating game. It's interesting you make that point about knowing the opposition as well. I thought that was definitely a factor.
Yeah, like when you have those players like Chilwell and Reece James attacking from the back, Chilwell especially was brilliant last night. That's an aspect to it as well that really was important for Chelsea.
Yeah, and I think he had a bit of nastiness about him as well to kind of get the job done at the end. Reece James is such an outstanding footballer, and the stat Nathan had about the two of them playing together was quite staggering actually. And you do think sort of Chelsea can kick on a bit from here now.
We have you back, Jasmine. We were just discussing the impact of Ben Chilwell last night, and I know that's something that you've touched on as well in your notes. Dortmund's deep defence and Chilwell getting forward just added an extra threat that we haven't massively seen from Chelsea yet this season. They of course don't have the number 10 in the box maybe that they would like to have to finish off a lot of these crosses, but Chilwell's impact was important.
Yeah, I think again it's that kind of blistering pace that you need from the kind of tactics Chelsea play at the moment. Dortmund could not cover him at all, and basically the further Dortmund would go back, they would have to make these terrible decisions that they get pushed into. Do you follow someone like Chilwell in the open space behind him, or do you go into the space and let Chilwell run at you, which you don't really want? And those are the kind of situations that any team can accidentally get into if the opposition can play it right. And that's something Chilwell offers Chelsea, which they haven't had for some amount of time, and something like that, especially again with his pace and directness, can be a game changer to Chelsea's tactics.
I did want to touch on Arsenal as well, Jasmine, while we have you, and probably a happier topic for you to discuss than Dortmund.
Yes.
I mean, just when you think they're going to drop points, they're 2-0 down to Bournemouth, you're like, this is the turning point in the season. They pulled it out of the bag, and that goal from Reece Nelson could be crucial come the end of the season in this title race. Tactically, what are Arsenal doing differently this season, if anything?
It's funny that you should say that. They haven't really changed much under Arteta. So when Arteta came in, he floated around with a 4-2-3-1 like we see many teams do. And especially in the FA Cup and against bigger teams, which won him the FA Cup in his first season, he would float more with a 3-4-3, a defensive back 3-5. He's moved completely away from that back 3-5 with the more counter-attacking aspect, and has gone into the more old Arsenal possessional-based, mostly possessional-based. But what's different compared to the rest of the league is that they build up further into the opposition box in a 2-3-5, and they're the only real team to do it as the extent Arteta does. So their build-up shape from the back line is a 2+3 with either inverted fullbacks or one of the double pivot to the left-hand side. It's a very old Pep Guardiola kind of style of play, which he's dropped in the last few years. And it's high man-to-man marking. So it's easier to circulate the ball like Arsenal tend to do. But the real difference this season is the kind of quality that they've invested in and the kind of payoff of the quality they've invested a little bit earlier. So someone like Martin Ødegaard, we know is fantastic. We know is a world-class player. Getting him was a massive shout, and now we've got someone who fits those kind of inverted fullback roles. So Ben White can obviously play right back and come more inside because he's a centre back too. Zinchenko has been such a vital player to bring in, someone with title experience, someone who can play that role, who has played that role under both Arteta and Pep. And also someone who was a centre midfielder who can take on the roles of being more attacking while being in the fullback area. So
you got to say, Jasmine, as well, the City players that Arsenal acquired, it's almost like, as much as Pep knows Arteta well, he's like, I've so much belief in this guy going forward as a coach. Arsenal ain't title contenders here, so it would be kind of funny if it bit him in the ass.
Yes, it would be.
Because Zinchenko is such a good player. He's a good player.
So good, honestly. But there's always the argument that people never understand why Pep Guardiola lets go of players. And I think the same will be made of João Cancelo going to Bayern Munich. There's always been an argument with which players Pep Guardiola lets go, and both Alexander Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus at Arsenal, I think, could be the turning point in the amount of quality, and is the turning point compared to prior years of Arsenal, especially how he knows Arteta's philosophy. So yeah, it might actually bite him in the arse, and as an Arsenal fan, I hope it does.
Gives you a chance on counter-attacks as well, Jasmine, this transition to the 2-3-5. You don't hear 2-3-5 too often.
Isn't that like a formation in one of those mad games in the Mega Drive where, like, you know, you just play like the bottom one on the list of 20 formations is 2-3-5. You try to beat your brother 3-0 down with 2 minutes left.
Pick the most metal one you can, but it seems to work, Jasmine.
Yes. I think it's not the most uncommon thing when teams change their kind of formations into these kind of patterns. We see different ones. So Dortmund, for instance, were a 3-1-5-1 last night whenever they would go closer to the box. So these build-up shapes aren't uncommon, but the way Arsenal and Arteta are using it in the league is quite different. It's always this kind of 2-3-5 shape, and the perfect example of this and how clear you can see it is in the first goal in the 3-1 against Tottenham this season. So the Thomas Partey strike outside of the box, you can see the 3 clear lines of 2, 3 and the 5, most of them in the box. I think the 2 wide players just on the outside. So yeah, it can be quite demanding on the opposition team to defend because it's just so many players, especially in the box. Sometimes this can go wrong, and I think we have seen it go wrong for Arsenal, especially when they have to rely on Nketiah, who can't hold up the play or link up play as well as Gabriel Jesus, or like even with Martinelli and Trossard are doing it a little bit better than Nketiah and Martinelli were. So it can be quite devastating for opposition teams, but it can be defended against as well.
Such an important period for Arsenal coming up. They've got Sporting Lisbon tomorrow night in the Europa League round of 16, first leg, the 5:45 kickoff, and the second leg, of course, next week. Fulham away and Palace at home are their 2 games this Sunday and the following Sunday before the international break. Jasmine, great stuff as per usual. We'll check in again very soon, no doubt. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Great stuff. Jasmine Baba there, the football analyst. And now it is time at 8:43 AM on this Wednesday's OTB AM for John Duggan's Virtual Insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
I'll never get sick of it.
No.
John Duggan, good morning.
Shane and Johnny, the only sport where you can actually tip winners or tip contenders at a price of 200, 250 to 1 is golf. So Kurt Kitayama won the Arnold Palmer Invitational last week. He was 200 to 1. One of our tips, Davis Riley, was placed at 250 to 1 for half a place. He was tied 8th. So we washed our face last week because the rest of them didn't do so well. So it's one of the only sports where a 50 to 1 shot has just a great chance, just as much as, whereas you in a horse race, it's a very rare thing, or in a football event, or the Leicesters of the world, they're complete freaks.
Mickey in my WhatsApp group the other day, he just texts in, this bookmaker is offering 12 places on the golf. Why won't you leave me alone golf betting? So it just always pulls you back.
Well, that's it. And one of the things about that is that they'll be offering skinnier odds, and the other bookmakers offering only 5 places but much better odds. So you just got to weigh up what you want to do. I generally go in the middle.
Yeah, so do you like to back, say, a golfer that you think like he's just very, very solid, like he's going to give me a consistent chance of at least finishing place, or do you want to go for the long shot at 100 that might blow hot and cold?
Well, the thing about it is, with the virtual money, for example, I picked 6 golfers this week on the podcast. I'm going to give you 2 now. So I'm trying to get it's like a bit like one of those Bruce Forsyth games, top, middle, bottom. So one from the top, one from the middle, one from the bottom. Just to try and...
countdown, is it?
And then you're sliding...
thinking of Carl Vorderman here, yeah.
And then you're sliding down in your stakes.
Yeah.
But sometimes you might feel that a 50-1 shot has a better chance than a 10-1 shot. So it just depends. I think the most important thing with all these things is outcome. What's the outcome going to be? What do we think the outcome is? And actually forget about the odds. But then again, if you're looking at value, would you be back in Galopin des Champs at 6-4 in a Gold Cup? Probably not. Would you back him at 4-1? Yeah, you would.
Yeah.
So you do have to look at the prices as well. Would I be back at Rory or Scotty Scheffler or John Ram this week? Probably not. So I'm going to give you the headline tip in the second one, and then the rest of them, if you want to listen, folks, you can on the podcast network. It's already up on wherever you get your pods, or on the Go Lad network for Off the Ball, or on Spotify. As the headline pick is somebody that I know people give out to me for tipping him, but he's one of the best golfers in the world, and it's only going to get better and better for Patrick Cantlay, who's 16-1 for 6 each way.
Your main man.
Well, that's it. Like Patrick Cantlay in his last two events has been, he was what? Last week he was tied for fourth at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and the tournament before that he was third. So if you're looking at 16-1 each way, you're looking at a profit. It's a bit like Rory in the majors last year. Didn't win any of them, but you would have made money at a back of Rory each way in majors. Patrick Cantlay playing very well at the moment. No real weaknesses to his game. Hits the ball very well off the tee. Is a good man of finding the right spots. Is a good putter. Has not had the best record at Sawgrass, the Players' Championship, which starts tomorrow 10 to 12 Irish time. But last year the weather was freakish. I wouldn't be too worried about that. I think this tournament is all about players who are in form. And Patrick Cantlay, who was tied 7th at Sawgrass through 54 holes in 2017 and tied 8th with 1 round to go in 2018, does have course form just a little bit behind in his career. At 16-1, he's the headline pick each way, 6 each way. The other one is Jason Day. I think if there are two Renaissance players this year in golf, there's Ricky Fowler and Jason Day. Jason Day is 28-1, hasn't won in 5 years, but he's won this tournament before. He's been in the top 10 in his last 4 events. He's really doing well on all the stats, 6th in strokes gained in total this year. He was once number 1 in the world. He was once a PGA champion. He had real issues with his back. His mother passed away, and then he was changing his swing. He went down to his low 175, but he's back now on the right track. Now he's back to 43rd in the world. And with that really, really good form, with the major pedigree, I think at 28-1, Jason Day is definitely worth watching as well at the Players' Championship. You've got Rory in it, you've got Shane, you've got Seamus Parra, and 4 really good days of golf to look forward to. The other 4 golfers are all on the podcast network. Bonus content, folks, for Virtual Insanity.
# bonus. Stay with us, John, but that is this week's Virtual Insanity. Usually there is a sting, but I mean, we can just sing it ourselves, maybe.
Yeah.
You have entered Power Drive.
Not bad. Not bad.
Oh, wow!
That's not bad.
Better again.
We should just do that from
That's
now on.
woken me up.
Yeah. There you go. John, before you leave, I did want to touch on this story. It's in the papers. It's in the back of the Irish Independent there as well. Rory McIlroy commenting on the Live Tour in seemingly positive terms, admitting that the emergence of the Live Golf Series has forced change in the, quote, antiquated existing system and drive the PGA Tour into the 21st century. Does he have a point? Like, I guess there are some aspects of
it's all about, like, there's more money now for PGA Tour players, and the elite are going to do better because of the threat of Live Golf money. So that has immediately created an urgency within the PGA Tour to shore up the players that could possibly leave and really fracture golf. And really, at the moment, golf, it's very sad this week that Cameron Smith's not playing in a way.
Yeah.
Like, he's a defending champion. He's a likeable fella. He's got a really interesting game, really good short game, really good, like, creative player around the greens. He's an open champion. And it is a shame that he's not playing. Do I blame the PGA Tour? No, because he defected to this Live Golf, which to me is just a sports washing entity for the Saudis. It's not about making money. It's not about competition. They say it's growing the game. It's not growing the game. The format is really, really boring. Nobody's interested in it, and people just took the cash. And that was their absolute right as sole traders and sole contractors. But the PGA Tour are now shoring up. They don't want John Ram to leave. They don't want Patrick Cantlay. They don't want Scotty Scheffler. They don't want Rory to leave. Or Rory obviously won't leave because he's been a leader in all of this. But, it is a shame that Cameron Smith isn't playing this week. But Liv has been better because the PGA Tour have had to get real very, very quickly, because you're not going to give extra money if there's no competition. Now there suddenly is competition with Greg Norman and the unlimited spigot of Saudi money. But then again, they could turn that off in a couple of years, and where would it be then?
Yeah.
And so what the plan is, Rory is talking about it on Sky, they're going to try and make a world tour now. They're going to try and make some of these events in the PGA Tour that are elite events over to Europe as well. I know they kind of done it in recent years with the Scottish Open. So I think you're going to have a world tour in the next 4 to 5 years. But can they staunch the bleeding of players to live? is the interesting thing.
And as Rory says as well, I guess the PGA Tour are competing with the likes of TikTok and Instagram, which is another aspect. One of the comments in here as well, I just wanted to touch on with you, John, as well. Chris says Shane probably half volleys his penalties. Chris, if I could get away with that, I would. John, I'm putting you on the spot here. Who's your favourite penalty taker of all time? Kind of cropped up with Ivan Toney at the weekend. Ruud van Nistelrooy is my number one.
Cantona was well up there.
Cantona, yeah.
Great penalty taker.
In terms of quality. There are plenty that you would trust with your life.
Letitia as well, yeah.
Well, do we have to mention him? Yeah, I think Eric Cantona was the first person that came to my head.
Right.
I remember those. Was it the 1994 FA Cup final? I think he might have got 2.
God, he rarely missed. He really rarely missed. And
it was the aura, wasn't it? Put keepers off straight away.
I think he used to kind of get the keeper's eyes and kind of
like Tony.
He was really, really calm. I've gotten a lot of slagging for saying I think Cantona was definitely overrated. I think because at the time the Premier League wasn't.
I don't think Cantona was fit enough
to be the player that he could have been. Yeah,
I don't think aerobically fit.
Yeah, I don't think Cantona was a fit enough player, especially when he came back. And also, Cantona was wild.
He was an actor masquerading as a footballer as well.
But he was wild. Cantona was a wild player. He was a wild player in France before he even went to England.
He was wild at Leeds. That's why Wilkinson let him go.
Yeah, for 1.1 million or whatever it was.
Look, some of the stories you read about Cantona in France were mad. And it's very sad that Cantona didn't get to play in 98 of the World Cup and because he was such a mercurial talent. But his best football he ever played was at Manchester United.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and he was an unbelievable penalty taker.
Yeah, 100%. Let us know in the comments, who is your favourite penalty taker? Or if you had a penalty to save your life, who's stepping up from 12 yards? I mean, that's a nerve-wracking
a bit of encroaching.
Yeah, give yourself a second chance. Jesus, not easy. John, great stuff as always.
Lads, mind yourselves.
Pleasure. Thanks a million. That is John Duggan, Virtual Insanity, as John said. You can find it in all the usual places for all the bonus content. #bonus. Up next, Derek McNamara's rugby stats breakdown ahead of the Scotland game will continue, and get excited for the build-up to that Six Nations game this weekend. First, though, Dublin's Dean Rock talking with our own Aisling O'Reilly yesterday.
Yeah, look, you're always evolving. You're evolving game by game, not even year by year. But I suppose how the game has gone now, it can be quite frustrating for maybe inside forwards and stuff like that with so many teams back. So you're trying to get your ball players on the ball as much as possible. But it is difficult. The game is now more so like basketball with 15 behind the ball, and 15 attacking, 15 defending. So it's challenging. And look, you're trying to break that mould and come up with ways to play a bit more attacking football and not play sort of mundane, boring football at times. But it's a challenge, and it's something that we're aspiring to do at the moment and working on the training ground. So we'll see what happens come summer.
Yeah, 8:52 AM on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM, and that was Dean Rock chatting with our own Aisling O'Reilly. Derek McNamara from reactrugby.com is back with us. Derek, good morning. How are things?
Yeah, good.
Be honest, Derek. Come
on, tell us.
Yeah, I had one of those nights that you have when maybe once or twice a year where all 3 of the kids woke at different times throughout the entire night. So you're watching the clock go 12 and then you're waking up and it's like 1 and then it's 3 and then it's 5. So basically I apologise in advance, but I hope you give me some leeway if I'm not as coherent as I normally am.
Bad parenting if you ask me.
Well, myself and Johnny are as far as we know, childless. So I mean that's
okay. So you're yet to experience the pain.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people relate to. I could not sleep last night for love nor money. I was wrecked tired, and I must have woken up 50 times worried about coming in this morning.
Worrying about waking up?
Yeah, waking up and just knowing the dread when the alarm goes off at
it's not nice, is it?
6:20. No, it's not, because I've been away in England for 2 nights, including a Cheltenham preview night. Your sleep is kind of disorientated. Early flight, and then I'm so tired here I can't sleep. So it's a totally different Derek.
Well, you're dealing with stats all the time, Derek, too, which doesn't make it easier, because you have to you have to concentrate by the whole nature of the whole thing.
Well, I tried explaining that there was no ice on the car. I was like, there's no sand in the... And I was like, oh no, that's not a good start to my day.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's just get through 25 minutes. I can give it my best for 25 minutes.
Will you get a nap later in the day now?
Let's not get into that.
With 3 kids, it's not easy to find.
Yeah.
We'll get into the first slide,
busy.
Derek, because Ireland, Scotland, we might as well build up to these games. So the 3 games this weekend: Italy, Wales, Saturday 2:15. England, France is 4:45 on Saturday, and then the big one, Scotland, Ireland, Murrayfield, Sunday at 3 o'clock. So the first stats here, we have Stats comparing Scotland and Ireland essentially in some different aspects of the game.
Yeah, I guess what we're trying to do is we're trying to boil the game down again into kind of easy to understand analysis or things that people can look out for during the game. So we have work rate, for instance. So for people that can't see this at home, we've basically broken down each team. We've got 3 games of analysis now. We've actually got an enormous amount of data now that we can actually kind of lean on and actually start to kind of look at this information and say, okay, well, what can we look out for in the game against Scotland? So Ireland are number 1 when it comes to work rate. Scotland are number 5. Tries against, Ireland are number 1. Scotland number 3. And then cards, things like, cards, for instance, something to look out for. Ireland are at the top. I don't think we've actually got a card yet, but Scotland are down at number 5 in the 6-team tournament. So what we're just trying to show here is that there's a bunch of different analysis aspects or different parts of the game that we can try and show that there's significant difference between one team and another.
This is very interesting. The work rate by half.
Yeah. So
that's not by half. It's basically a ranking. So
explain for the people that are looking at that latest graphic up on screen. What does this?
Sorry. Yeah, we were going on
first half and second half. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. If we just go back to the previous slide. Yeah. So the work rate is basically what we're saying here isn't that it's not half of Ireland. We're saying that when we rank all 6 teams, Ireland have had the most amount of activities in the game.
Yeah.
Then I think it's Wales, and then anyway moving down. But what we're saying here is that Scotland have the second last, so they've got the second lowest work rate. That's what this information here means. But these are kind of box scores, right? These are just sort of high-level view of analysis. This isn't stuff that we would be calling as revolutionary from what we do. Not at all. It's actually, this is the easiest stuff that we do. But what I want to try and bring through is the next slide, if we can show the next slide, which is this is basically our grades. When we take each player's interaction and we aggregate the first half and the second half. So in this slide, we have 2 lines. One is for Ireland and one is for Scotland. The lines on the left show the work rate and the quality of the work rate in the first half and the quality of the work rate in the second half. And this is sort of analysis that we would have provided into Ron O'Gara last year, and he would have been able to look at trends and the way in which Leinster play. And they were able to identify that Leinster had a significant drop-off in the quality of their performances in the second half. And that's what this indicates.
Is that fitness, or is it change in personnel, or what is it, or is it the tactics of kind of reserving yourself for, like Ireland have finished, like the French game, they finished so strongly.
Yeah. Well, this line, what we're showing here is the trend in Ireland's play at the moment isn't that they're finishing poorly. That was for Leinster last year. Ireland are actually dropping off significantly at the end of the first half.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So there's a big drop off, and that could be just because they're and this is if you were looking at this from an analytical perspective, this first half view is kind of what you want to see. You want to see the players, being as come out of the blocks, be as tuned in as possible, and then have a drop off throughout this first half. So that's what this indicates. But what we want to try and identify is, how do we identify the difference between a team and the quality of their performance? And this shows basically we have Ireland are better. There's basically 6 sections per half. Ireland are significantly better in 1, 2, 3 sections, while Scotland are slightly better in 1 and better in 1. So what we're trying to say here is that using the box scores, we can kind of tell a story, but using the analytics and the grades that we collect, we can actually predict to some extent what will happen if the game plays out in the same way as we'd expect. But
stupid question alert here, Derek, from me, but so you're seeing figures there for people who are listening as opposed to watching. 3.47, 3.44, Ireland kind of dropping off to 3.28 towards the end of the second half. What do these numbers mean? How do you quantify something like work rate?
So we say, okay, we look at passes, for instance. If we to give a grade of 1 to 5 on a pass that's a turnover is a 1, and a perfectly timed pass is a 5. A ruck is a 1 that results in a penalty or turnover that's dangerous, and a 5 is a perfectly body position, down low, technique perfect, protecting the ball. carrying the ball is speed onto ball. So if a player's running as fast as they can, sprinting, then they get a 5. If they're going backwards, they get a 1. It's all of these scores are very, very meticulous. So carrying to contact, for instance, if you spill the ball when you go into contact, you get a 1. If you go backwards, you go 2. 3 is just somebody goes to ground. A 4 is they break a tackle but they go to ground, and a 5 is they break a tackle and they stay on their feet. So when we aggregate those scores, and the Ireland line, there's 4,000 of these grades graded in this green line. And it's the same for Scotland, probably a little bit less. But the idea here is that it's a very, very accurate score. So, there's maybe 300 or 400 players involved in rucks. We can then say, okay, where does Ireland lie compared to Scotland using this analysis? And it's what we're trying to do is we're trying to take all this massive amounts of information and provide it in a kind of easy to understand view. So you don't have to use your head. You can just go, all right, Ireland are dropping off in the first half.
Yes.
How can we try and change that trend?
You look at some of the other, I'm just looking at some of the other stats from that first opening slide. So you're talking penalties against. So penalties against Ireland in 4th, that's...
Yeah, so they're giving away. That's something that we would look to say to Ireland and say, look, this is something that you probably know. You're giving away too many penalties.
Yeah.
I think Andrew Porter probably give away most of these. So, but look, that's something in minute detail. But the idea here is that's something to look out for. Ireland aren't going to be able to break Scotland down as much in that kind of. Halfway to their own to Scotland's 22 as much as other teams, because they're just not going to give away those penalties.
You wanted to touch on some of the other games as well.
Yeah,
so
I thought
England, France. You have similar stats for them. This game's going to be fascinating on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I guess we looked at England and Scotland as well. We kind of changed some of these stats are different because again we want to try and show the significant difference between them. So the things that are kind of really interesting is that England are joint first with us with no cards, and France are at the bottom. So France are the most indisciplined team when it comes to cards.
Things never change.
Yeah. And penalties against England are first, and France are 5th. So
England are hitting a lot of good metrics there, which seems a bit surprising.
This is the issue with the current state of analysis. So what we've trying to do is we're trying to give you kind of a very broad view, but when we start to look into it in a little bit more detail, we provide a secondary layer of analytics, which is, based on passing, carrying, tackling, kicking, the metrics, the skill sets that you want to know. And England aren't quite at the top there.
That adds up.
Yeah. So what the one thing that, we look at as well to try and take into consideration is passes pressured. So basically, England are number 2 when they pressure France. So look out for that quick line defence, trying to disturb France's game plan. And then look, obviously you'd expect this, but England are 6th when it comes to offloads versus France, who are number 1. So that whole idea of jouer is very much in line here. So we just go on to the next slide. Then we're just taking the same view as the Ireland versus Scotland, where we're taking those thousands and thousands of grades and aggregating them by first half and second half, and you can see that there's not much of a difference between the two teams. England are a little bit better in 3 of those sections, and France are significantly better in 1. So, again, if we were to look at this and we were to, think about this from a gambling perspective or put it from a game plan, and also looking at the likes of, I don't think France have won in Twickenham in 15, 20 years or something like that. The information that we see here would indicate that England are probably favourites when it comes to this game.
This data is just based on the Six Nations this year,
the last 3 games. So it's all equivalent, you know what I mean? And it's a perfect example of how to use data to drive decision making and actually improve performance.
So for people listening as well, so England seeming by work rate by half, seeming to finish each half slightly stronger than France have in the Six Nations so far.
Yeah, and exactly, and England come out of the blocks in the second half as well, tuned in. So watch out for points scored. We can actually layer over this where teams are scoring their points as well in the same vein to show you where, is this quality of performance equating to scores.
I would have presumed France were favourites, so England actually metrically have
There's things wrong with France though.
Yeah.
There's things wrong with France. The previous slide would indicate that they're really not number 1. They're number 1 at offloads, but you know,
it's the way they play.
Their work rate, the way in which they play, they're 6th in work rate. So we think, I'm not sure if you heard the previous pods, but we've been going on about this from the start. Even last summer, we were talking about it. The fact that the new rules that they've brought in have increased the amount of ball and time played by 20%.
That's purrs. That's French laziness, or what's going on there?
No, they've played a very big pack, you know, and those if you're getting them to work 20% more,
tiring.
Yeah. Also, but they've also used the most amount of subs. So their subs have played most amount of minutes. Now that's due to the cards. So those cards are the reason why that happens. So there's like 4 or 5 things that are kind of jumping at me, saying, okay, they're every game they play, there tends to be more of these small little issues that are coming up, rather than them fixing the issues that they have. So the trajectory of Ireland is still at a very, you know, steady pace, improving, you know, learning different ways to play, learning to play different teams. With France, it's plateaued. They're not getting worse, but they're not getting better. The defense is getting worse, but their attack is getting slightly better.
I love trying to decipher whose halftime team talks are better based on these stats. Like you see Scotland coming out stronger in games than Ireland in the second half, and similarly for England and France. The Gregor Townsend and Steve Borthwick team talks must be that little bit more inspirational based on these numbers.
It's also the changes you're making as well, like
True.
in the sense of the fourth quarter, where you probably do want to change your pack a bit, like because they're getting tired or whatever. The 20% thing as well, like it's mad. It's like the World Cup in football, where all of a sudden, like you're dealing with like 20% more time because of injury time, and it changes so much in the dynamic.
Yeah, well, it's not. It wouldn't be as effective in soccer, I don't think, because it's not a physical sport. But when you've got guys running at each other for
so tired,
they're not conditioned to do it, and then you get a yellow or a red card at the start of the game, and all of a sudden your game plan changes. It's very much it's really has changed the game, but in a better way, right? Like the game is more free flowing. There's more passing. There's more evasion, which is fundamentally what rugby is, right? So that can be good. I can foresee the fact that players are going to reduce in size and skill level is going to increase, which is what you want.
And would the stats suggest Scotland or the Scottish game or the England game is more of the banana skin for Ireland in this quest for the Grand Slam?
Well, Ireland are very much based around process and understanding the way in which we play, and the fact we've got so many leaders in so many positions, it means that we're able to. The coaching staff are able to get that game plan over to the players, and players just take it over.
Okay.
But if you have any of those kinks in that group of players, like Scotland might have, you know, they a red card, so there are a couple of players that are missing. That's, you know, in Ireland with the work rate that we have, even if Scotland get ahead, and I can imagine, I can foresee Scotland doing something a bit quirky, a bit different. You know, like I think it was 2017, they the quick line out throw to the centre, scoring the try.
Wow.
I can imagine something like that happening again, maybe potentially with Scotland. But if Ireland can continue to keep that ball in play, Ireland's work rate should do it.
Battle for the wooden spoon, or to avoid the wooden spoon rather than Rome Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, so there's some really glaring analysis ideals here from Wales especially. There's one thing that is very interesting. They've used the most amount of players in the competition.
Right.
England have used the least amount. But the thing that it doesn't bode well to a certain extent for Wales is their defensive game plan. They're doing a very high pressured game plan, but they're also having the most amount of tackles after ball. So after when a ball is passed, they're still continuing to tackle. As soon as you do that, though, what happens is that the players. There's gaps in the defensive line, and that's what the pass is pressured. So Italy are 6th, so Italy are very passive in their defensive line. But the way Italy play, they're very, very fast. They're very, very quick. They're very, very quick at moving the ball. I would imagine that this would probably be a reasonably high-scoring game because of that, because Italy have got such fast backs and they run the ball so quickly. Even if they're missing what's his name? I can't pronounce it.
I'm not going to attempt the Italian. Carvisi, yeah. Columns the
Carvisi, yeah.
Language guy.
Yeah, so, but the point here is that if Wales can come out and try and, increase the work rate, they could. And also, like, Wales, they do contest most of the plays. They do contest most of the breakdowns of all the teams. So it's quite old school way of playing.
Breakdowns contested. Wales are in first.
Yeah.
Italy sixth compared to the other Six Nations teams.
So Italy, again, quite passive in defence. They'll allow you to get the ball and retain the ball. They won't try and steal it. Whilst Wales, which it could have something to do with the age of their team, and they're not willing to run as much, and they're just willing to get to a breakdown, and they'll make they'll contest a breakdown, but not expect it to actually turn over the ball. They're just doing because they're there. But
do you have a general figure for what home advantage is worth? Or does that vary kind of, I guess, from ground to ground? Because like it's funny in the pandemic, all of a sudden just home advantage, certainly in football, practically just didn't matter anymore. It literally is all about the crowd, funnily enough, and that actually seemed to prove it. And you'd imagine this is a big factor for Italy here.
Yeah, I think it can be cyclical though, right? I think you can get a coach that will be able to work with a specific type of players to try and get more out of them for that ideal before the game. But if you don't play well at the start of a game, you're going to lose the crowd.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No matter how much you have home field advantage. So I don't know. Like it's hard for Italy because like they have shown improvement, but they're not showing it on the scoreboard. You know.
It's Capozzo, sorry, that Italy are missing a course.
They're certainly scoring more. Like they're certainly scoring more, but they're obviously losing games.
Yeah, I don't think we have enough data to actually, accurately identify the difference between home and away.
Work rate by half looks to be, Derek. The time to really get at the Italians is just before half time.
Yeah, there or try and slow down Wales is more so. So in this line, the Welsh they have their best section at the end of the half. So basically, they're slow to get into the game. You probably expect that with the age of their team, which is quite old. But they do improve in the first half. So if you're Italy, if you can weather that storm at the end of the first half, then you've got a really good chance of winning this. So for people that are listening, Italy are better in two sections and Wales is better in one section. So it's a lot closer than the others again.
You have also been busy picking a React Rugby team of the tournament. Now, what I love about this is, generally speaking, when people pick teams of the tournament, it's biased. People have their opinions. There's no opinion that's necessarily wrong.
Yep.
This is firmly based in stats, Derek.
Yeah, this is as nerdy as you're going to ever get from a statistical perspective. Yeah.
So maybe talk us through the team. So in terms of the personnel, France and Italy have no players. Wales have 1. Ireland have 4 players in the team of the tournament. England and Scotland have 5 each. So talk us through it.
Yeah, I suppose Pierre, who's the loosehead prop from Scotland, he grades really, really highly because he's really good at tackling, he's really good at carrying, and he's really good at rucking. So he does those 3 things, and obviously he's really good at scrummaging. So if you take those 3 things in open play, we weight those players towards what the average prop does. And by doing that, we can then identify who's the best player based on arrival rate, accuracy at the ruck, tackle, where they make the tackle, all these things that we can rank. There's like 92 separate grades or qualitative metrics that we use. So really nerdy stuff here. But the idea is that once we filter by position, we can then say who's the best player by week or by tournament or by whatever it is. And so that way we can, see that James Ryan would be, he's included. So the Irish players that are involved are James Ryan, Caelan Doris, Josh van der Fleer and Hugo Keenan. And what you probably find is a lot of people out there, you don't need to do analysis to get that. I could have told you that.
Well, you got a lot of French people who are scoffing at this as well. They're like, how can we not have one player? We've the best scrum half in the world. But obviously the metrics suggest this.
Well, so I don't have the actual. I could open it up, but it's not great radio. But
and I like sleep.
Yeah. It's but he hasn't had the best game. Game, and like the way in which France are playing, they need to pass the ball more. So the likes of Dupont, he's a good passer, but he's a really good carrier. But if he's not a leg carry, if he doesn't have his forwards making front forward ball and making, so how scrum halves break the game then is that they don't just break after first phase. Because there's never gaps there for first phase. There has to be go forward ball. They need to be able to get over the game line and actually make cause disruption in the defensive line. That's where he then goes. But if he's not allowed to do that, and he doesn't, the French aren't doing that, the Pack aren't doing that for him, then his grades aren't going to be as high as somebody like Jamie, I think I can't even pronounce his name, sorry. So he is really, really accurate at passing, but he's also gets the breakdown really, really quickly. So he's doing what a quintessential scrum half should be doing.
And why is Finn Russell, why is he number one then as out of?
So Finn Russell, I was having a bit of a go at him last week, but he was actually...
you got to have a go at him and love him at the same
you got to
time.
big up the Scots this week. Get them on their pedestal.
He's one of the reasons I certainly, as a floating rugby fan, I love watching him play.
Yeah.
It's just like it's something, you don't know what's happening here a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, he does, but I don't.
Well, that's another thing about the game on Sunday. Finn Russell actually had the most amount of touches of all players last week when you take away the scrum halves, because the scrum halves just pass the ball. But when you take away all the players, he had the most amount of impact on the game last week. And he's brilliant. I think he has the most amount of turnovers for 10s. I think the closest is 4. He has 12. Okay.
Wow.
So he does turn the ball over, but he also has turnovers 4. So he has 12 turnovers against, but he also has 2
But he kicks the ball a lot as
22s.
well, so he's kind of he will give the ball away,
Yeah, but he used away that skip pass. But I'd imagine for Friday or Sunday's game, Ireland's team will have enough homework done about Finn Russell, and I'd imagine that although Finn will probably bring in, there'll be crossfield kicks, there'll be things to try and disrupt what Ireland are going to do in defence at the start. But I think Ireland will shut down Finn Russell.
What will they do?
If I was playing against him, I'd just blitz one person. Whatever, average 14. I think his average pass right. He primarily passes off his right.
Okay.
So I think there's like a 15% discrepancy between him passing left and passing right. So he doesn't get the. So when he gets the ball, and he's anyway under pressure, he won't pass off his right. He'll kick it. So what I would imagine is that the Irish team will blitz outside Finn Russell. Not directly beside him, but like 15 metres outside him. And then that will mean that as soon as he gets the ball, and he's always going to give that pass because he likes passing, that'll just blitz the defence, and it will just slow down any go forward ball. And also, so the other teams that they've played against, they commit to the tackle much quicker. So they'll run up and they'll hit Finn Russell when he makes the pass, and then what'll happen is that Finn Russell will then do a dummy pass, and they'll all follow it the next time, and then he'll go through. So Ireland will know all this. They've got too many good players to fall for that. So I definitely foresee them. Yeah, Ireland winning.
Yeah. Some people listening, the full team in full, that team of the tournament, based exclusively on stats. Scoman for Scotland, Loosehead, Turner at hooker. You've got Sinclair for England at tight head as well. Second row of Chesham and James Ryan, Ludlow, Doris and Van der Fleer. No arguments there. Van Portvliet, as we said, at scrum half, and Finn Russell at number 10. You've got Hawkins, the only Welsh inclusion, at number 12, and Hugh Jones as well. And then no arguments with that one. Number 11, Duan van der Merwe. Hugo Keenan, as you said, Derek, at 15, and Mallins at 14 as well. So listen, people can let us know what they want us to touch on next week. We've got a fairly big game the week after this one, if we beat the Scots this weekend, all being well. Someone in the comments has said, Jack has said, any stats on how many times James Lowe has to tie his hair back up? Potentially we'll look at that next week.
I presume you've that covered.
It's a difficult one. We'll look at it next week maybe.
Yeah. We can add it in there. Right? Yeah, not about it.
It's a fairly important one. Derek, great stuff as always. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
Brilliant stuff. Derek McNamara there, reactrugby.com, as we said. 9:19 a.m. on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM. Here are some highlights on the OTB podcast network coming up across the day. You've got the hurling pod, you've got the football show, and Dean Rock, who was speaking in conversation with Aisling O'Reilly. You can follow OTB across social and subscribe to the OTB podcast network. After this very short break, the former Ireland international Seán O'Brien previewing Ireland versus Scotland.
OTB AM.
OTB Sports Rugby.
1 to 15, everyone's got a role to play in terms of breaking down the opposition, but
it's enjoyable attack to be involved in, because we all like to play rugby and get our hands on the ball and stuff like that.
I think they are a brave team. I don't think they think like Irish teams of old. I really don't.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB SPORTS app now.
The Heineken Champions Cup is back. Leinster take on Ulster in the round of 16, Saturday, April 1st at 5:30 in the Aviva Stadium. Join the Sea of Blue for this massive inter-provincial clash. Tickets on sale now at leinsterrugby.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Alright, 9:20 on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM. Delighted to welcome the former Leinster Ireland international, Lions star, and the current Leinster contact skills coach, Seán O'Brien, to the show this morning. Seán speaking ahead of the Ireland versus England Legends charity match, which will take place in Energia Park, Donnybrook, on St Patrick's Day in aid of rugby charities both in Ireland and the UK. Tickets are available to purchase on universe.com. Seán, good morning. The term charity match usually says they're going to take it easy, it's nice and handy, but Ireland versus England never really pans out that way, does it? It'll get quite competitive, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think it'll be a little bit competitive anyway, but I think from previous years it's been a very good spirited game anyway, and nothing too major happens, so it's more about the after party, and the charity is what more people are focused on rather than the rugby. So but it should be an entertaining game, and looking forward to being a part of it.
Presumably you have to keep yourself in decent nick then for all of these charity matches that crop up, because you just never know when you're going to get the call up.
Well, I'm back training there now. I pulled a hammy off the bone 4.5 months ago now, so I'm back, hopefully back with Nace in the next couple of weeks. But I think that game will be my intro back into rugby as such. So yeah, I'm training away and keeping myself in reasonable condition anyway.
We'll take a good look ahead to this weekend's game, Seán. Scotland-Ireland, Murrayfield, Sunday afternoon, 3 o'clock. It's always a fixture that brings up a little bit of spice in the build-up. 2017, I guess, and Bustgate being one of the famous incidents, the 27-22 defeat for Ireland on that occasion. What do you remember about that day? Because Murrayfield is a tough place to go, generally speaking, but when you have, I guess, an incident that derails the build-up to the kickoff, doesn't help matters.
No, it doesn't, I suppose. And I think, everyone's talking about 2017 and even 2014 as well, and a few bits and pieces like that. They're bringing up the past. I think this whole team is just in a different mindset now, in a different place completely. So nothing really phases them. I think they've prepped really well, obviously, and you can see that in the way they've attacked the first 3 games. So nothing will change, I don't think, this weekend. The one thing that I'm worried about is that Scotland have been playing the best rugby they've played in the last few years. So their attack is very good, their defence is very good, their set piece is really strong. So they have developments to their game that have improved an awful amount, and they're a very dangerous side. So Ireland will have to be defensively brilliant this weekend to negate the threats that Scotland have.
How much do you read into the Italy game, Seán? Like on the one level, Ireland coughed up a few tries, weren't great, but on the other, like, it's surely good to come through a challenge like that as well, and to maybe learn more about the team as well and the players on the fringes.
Yeah, I think it is. I think if you look back at the game and you break it down, the minute details of it, it was the basics that we didn't do really well at times against Italy. Whether that be a defensive read or a silly offload or a 50-50 ball. And to be fair to Italy, I think they've grown an awful amount. Their attack, even though at times it's chaotic and madness from their own 22, I think their attack has come on leaps and bounds. And the one thing that Italy are good at in this championship is they've been very disciplined, which in previous years has been very, very poor. And that's probably the thing that gives teams access, is discipline and how good you are at it. So Italy, to be fair, have come on an awful amount, and they've given every game they've been involved in, they've caused trouble. So they're getting a lot better. So you have to give hats off to them first. And then Ireland just weren't clinical enough with that decision making, I thought, at times, and the smarts around the game. But they'll have learned a lot from that. And they know if they defend like that this weekend, that they'll be in big trouble.
That Scottish centre partnership, Seán, is concerning for Ireland, something to certainly have to contend with. We were discussing Finn Russell there before you came on. I know he had to go back and play with Racing last weekend, part of his contract, which is maybe a minor distraction that he didn't need during the Six Nations, but c'est la vie. How can Ireland contend with that pairing? Because it clearly, looking on paper, is one of the areas that Scotland will be most dangerous.
Yeah, they will. Their whole backline is very dangerous. I think the important thing for Ireland is to not defend any individuals, and defend as one big green wall. I think, if you start really going after Russell, and everyone has that mindset to go after Russell or to go after Hugh Jones or whoever it may be that's playing, it's that's what they want. Finn Russell wants someone to jump out at him. Finn Russell wants someone to put a lot of pressure on him, because there's space either side of him then. So if people aren't connected, or the defensive line isn't connected with Finn Russell in front of you, you're asking for trouble. So it's just about staying connected and the micro chat and communication that the boys will have this weekend will be very important about when to go get him, when they're together, or when not to go and get him and just keep our line. So it's important that he feels pressure, but the right pressure. And not individual pressure where someone's just trying to go and solve something or try and shut him down quickly. It's going to be a team effort, I think, defensively this weekend.
It's funny, I'm looking at one of the comments coming in here on the YouTube. Scotland will want to leave the stadium after 5 minutes. It will be too easy for Ireland. Like Andy Dunn was on with Jerry Thornley on, I think it was Wednesday night rugby last week, and he was saying he thinks Ireland will, very confident. Ireland will do a number on them, I think is the phrase he used. 12 to 15 points, that kind of bracket. Seán, it strikes me that this Irish team, regardless of all this talk and the hype and expectation in some quarters that Ireland will, quote unquote, do a number on Scotland, there seems to be no complacency in this Irish squad whatsoever.
No, I don't think there is at the minute. And, people will obviously expect Ireland to win against Scotland at the weekend. And the lads probably expect to win, obviously, as well, and want to win. But, it's a different kettle of fish going over into the middle of Murrayfield with a very dangerous Scottish team that are in a different place than they were 12 months ago. So they have to contend with that first and foremost, and make sure physically they're there early on in the game. And I think Ireland will win, obviously, and I think they'll break them eventually. But there's a lot of factors in the game, and as I said, defensively, I think they're going to have to be brilliant this weekend. But I'd be very wary of this game. This is the one that I said at the start of the championship that was going to be the trickiest. So I don't think it'll be 12 or 15 points, but I think there'll probably be, it could be 6 or 9 maybe in the end. But it's going to be a cracking weekend, I think, for rugby.
How would you assess the respective packs in the game?
I think the Scottish scrum is flying at the minute. And their set piece has been pretty good. I think Ireland would be. I'd say they're disappointed with what they got out of their line-out attack the last time, and there's little elements in the scrum. So I think we'll hopefully see a different animal now this weekend, because they're going to have to be better. So it's fairly evenly matched, I think. And you have the likes of Tig and these boys as well are coming back in. So Ireland will have a bit of fresh energy there.
That's an excellent point. Like the fact that Ireland have managed to do so well, Seán, without Jamison Gibson Park, without Tyke Furlong, some of these players that are so important, Robbie Henshaw being another one as well. The strength and depth is clearly there. And I'm not getting too far ahead of myself thinking about Ireland Scotland in Paris on October 7th, but to win a World Cup or to get deep into a tournament like that, you need that strength and depth, and clearly that's there.
Yeah, it is there now, and I think I said during the week, I think there's going to be more players that are going to put their hands up in the coming months. There's a lot of rugby to be played between now and the World Cup, so it's great that Ireland can be successful without a Tyke Furlong, James Gibson Park, Robbie Henshaw, even a Gary Ringrose the last time. They're key players within that team. So it's great that we have the depth now and the people and the confidence in those people to just go, here, you're starting this weekend, and it's seamless. You look at someone like Tom O'Toole, like how good he's been since he's come in. He's been brilliant. And the centres, McCluskey, brilliant as well. So I'm glad to see all those boys that are actually taking their chance now and going really well.
Tom O'Toole, like, could he do a job from the start? Like, on the other side of things, I guess Tadhg Furlong, it depends how fit he is, whether he starts the game or not. But O'Toole has been a revelation and done the job, as you say, exactly what it says on the tin. Every time he's come in, he's been brilliant.
Yeah, I think Tom will have a lot of confidence from what the impact he's had on games since he's come in. So if he were to start him, I don't see why he wouldn't have that confidence and add to the game what he brings with the ball carrying ability and his work rate. So it's great to have tight heads that are able to do that throughout our squad. So yeah, he's been very good. He's been excellent in the games he's come on. He made a real impact. So it's great to see, and because you would worry about that position up until a couple of months ago, you'd worry about the depth we have there, but we've covered now, and it's a great place to be.
Yeah, is there clarity in the out half situation now, Seán? Do you think?
I think there is. Yeah, I think there is. I still think Ross has done very well. I think he would have been probably frustrated after the last game in terms of just the cohesion between him and Stu and Bundy probably wasn't where it needed to be, in terms of, like, he has two big boys outside him trying to move around, trying to communicate. They're different kind of to a Ringer or a Henshaw in terms of the communication and the way they're able to work off the ball. So, but I do think he's been excellent. And then you have someone like Jack in the background there that's involved in the squad, seeing what's going on, learning from the likes of Johnny, learning from Ross as well. Young player who has a bit about him. I really like him. I like the way he likes contact as well. He likes getting involved in breakdowns and bits and pieces. And he's a niggly player. For a 10, it's great to have. So to have that depth now, and then underneath that, then you have another few boys who are chomping at the bit to get back in.
Where's Cullen Doris's best position, Seán? Because he played the first two games at number 8, number 6 against Italy. Seems to have that little bit more. He seems to enjoy number 8 slightly more and have that little bit of freedom. But where do you think he's best utilised? It's a good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. I think 8 is his position, though. It's just where he has played his best rugby, isn't it? So, that's him nailed on there in my head anyway. I don't think there's anyone really challenging him too much at the minute in that 8 jersey. So he's just been phenomenal, though. His stats and his work rate and his little touches and his skill set has been phenomenal, really. And one of the things that makes Ireland really good at the minute. He's a very, very important player for us.
That thing you mentioned about young players getting a chance and Andy Farrell not being afraid to kind of change things around game to game. Players like John Hodnett, Jamie Osborne that maybe aren't getting massive game time at the moment, they can stay encouraged, and even for that 32-man World Cup squad, they can be massively encouraged because Andy Farrell clearly has no issues throwing youth in there.
Absolutely, and I think, as I said, there's a bit of rugby to be played between now and then. So those boys are going to challenge, obviously. Those boys are going to be, they're the ones who are chasing the boys who are in that position at the minute. And you even have the likes of Ryan Baird as well, who's trying to kick on and push on. So the senior lads or the older crew that's in there are going to be under pressure. They know that there's pressure there, but on the flip side of that, it drives them to be better. It drives their standards as well. So it's a great place that the whole environment is in, and the depth that we have, and the younger guys that aren't even in the environment that are playing well week in, week out with their provinces. So it's positive in terms of who we have in the production line and where they're going. So it's a great place for Irish rugby to be in, and a great place for provinces to be in too.
Predictions, Seán, for this weekend. You sound reasonably confident, but as you say, it's tough. It's tough to do a Grand Slam when the teams are so evenly matched at the moment, and Scotland look different than they have done in previous years.
Absolutely, and I said at the start of the year that I didn't think there would be a Grand Slam winner, but just seeing the way the Irish team have gone about their business, it is a possibility. Obviously, I'd love to see it. I still think Ireland will be too good this weekend. So I'm going to say Ireland by 6.
We take that. I think we take that. Are there any mad team selections or players you'd throw into the starting 15? Like, just looking at the squad, you've got Kieran Frawley back in, Sexton, of course, back in the team. No place for Joey Carberry again. But there are options there.
Yeah, there are options there. There's lots of options. I don't think I'd like the selection. I think Andy and the coaching staff have been spot on. In my eyes, anyway. It's been great. It's great balance, I think, within the team. And they tried a few things in Italy. Some of them might need a bit of fine tuning, but in general, I think the team kind of picks itself at the minute when everyone is fit, and the bench we have is incredibly strong now as well. So it's a great complaint to have.
Yeah, it's all positive. All roads to Murrayfield this Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Seán, great stuff as always. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads. Cheers.
Brilliant. Seán O'Brien there. Looking ahead to Scotland versus Ireland this weekend. Are you excited? Are you optimistic?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think the confidence, the body language, the squad depth that they have. I think they just. I never felt against Italy they were going to do anything other than win, and I think the French performance brought Ireland to the level that they need to, and I still think. I just think they're finishing match so strongly. Their forwards are so strong. Very little flaws, and I have to say I enjoy watching this team far more than when Joe Schmidt was manager. And I don't know whether that's probably evolution as well. In that, and maybe some of the attacking players are a little bit better now as well. And Keenan has come in, but they're a better team to watch. I think.
Sure.
They look like they're able to conform to the game plan, but also express themselves maybe a bit more. And that's just from being a sort of a flaky rugby fan. But I find them. I really do enjoy watching them. I think this is going to be a cracking game because Scotland are. This is the big game of the two that's left. For the Grand Slam rather.
There's relative confidence in the YouTube comments as well. England aren't exactly a challenge. Too easy to beat. No team can challenge Ireland. Springboks and All Blacks are weak.
Well, England can't. England have kicking issues, and I'd be amazed if England beat Ireland, to be honest.
Yeah, it'll be a decent game on Paddy's weekend if we can get over the threat of Scotland this weekend. Someone else in the comments pointing out that Johnny was all for Liverpool winning the Champions League. You've got that wrong. The comment, Connor, that Johnny was actually saying was they're close to the Champions League, as in close to the top 4.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Clarify.
5 wins on the bounce and no goals conceded. I didn't see that, but give it a go.
He wasn't saying they were going to necessarily usurp Real Madrid's lead in the Bernabeu.
Give it a go though. Like this is not a vintage Real team. Give it a go, Liverpool, and who knows.
Yeah, 9:37 a.m. on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. Do want to touch on this as well. This is a lovely initiative. Girls in Green. It's a colouring book for young girls and boys across Ireland, but add some colour to the Irish women's football team in their path to the World Cup. It's from Game We Love. Stewie Byrne is involved in this.
Lovely.
So Stewie and Shauna Cook will join myself and Adrian in studio on Friday mornings OTBAM to discuss this book, but it's dedicated to all females past, present and future who have given effort, time and passion to improve the standards of football for all. But it's a really good idea. It's kind of the journey to the World Cup, and plenty of activities and colouring books, and that famous Amber Barrett goal touched on as well.
That even looks like Amber Barrett. It was funny.
It's absolutely uncanny. Some of the photos.
And
Katie McCabe there as well.
It's nothing but bring you back to your kind of youth as well. It was funny the podcast, the LOI podcast we do. Our producer Derek, his daughter Lucy's big into football, and he said we're after getting the LOI season pass there. Lucy just wants to watch all the games.
Brilliant.
So now he goes, I'm picking up now, so I'm watching like highlights of Rovers and Derry because Lucy wanted to watch the games herself and she's mad into women's football, men's football, and the LOI is in a great place, partly because of the underage leagues, partly because the standard is good, and partly because we're bringing in the umbrella of all the women's teams as well as women's underage, and everyone. All of a sudden there are hundreds of people more involved and feeling part of it.
Absolutely. Great initiative, that one, from Game We Love. So Girls in Green is the name of the colouring book, so you can look it up. All the parents out there. International Women's Day as well, so good time to mention that. Johnny, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Shane.
As per usual.
Tomorrow, watch out who you find in your Dublin saunters today.
The Burke family might be there.
Case,
exactly. I might avoid them today and just enjoy the rest of my day. On tomorrow morning's show, we've got more Ireland-Scotland build-up with Craig Chalmers and Alison Miller. Seány Johnston will discuss Kildare's disastrous start to Division 2 this year and potential drop to the Talton Cup for them if they don't pick things up very, very quickly. We'll talk Cavan with Seány as well and how well they're doing so far in Division 3. Reaction to tonight's Champions League knockout game, Spurs in action. Martin Lipton will join us. Plus, the impressionist Conor Moore will join myself and Ger and tell us why you had to be there. Right now, the rest of Ashling's interviews with the host of Dublin GAA Stars. Have a gorgeous Wednesday.
So Dean, how is things? The league so far is going pretty well. Just the one loss to Derry last weekend.
Yeah, look, I suppose we've had a very competitive start to Division 2. It's most games have gone down to the wire, which is probably what you want, because that's what the summer is going to be like, more or less. But yeah, look, a great game against Derry. Obviously disappointed with the result, but certain aspects you're pleased with. But to go all that way up there and not get a victory, not get a point, it was disappointing. But you know, back on the horse now and ready to go for Meath in a couple of days' time, which is a really exciting game to look forward to.
Where do you think it went wrong against Derry? Obviously you had the 5-point lead at half time, so things were looking quite comfortable then.
Yeah, look, I suppose we played particularly well in the first half. It wasn't perfect, but you know, we had a good lead going in at half time, and then I suppose just with games, momentum, and when Derry got a goal, obviously it's difficult, and the massive home support there as well. So it was it was one of them things. But you know, we look back on it, there's certain, when you lose by a point, you probably overanalyze everything, but there were certain aspects of the second half performance we disappointed with in terms of just turning the ball over, but something to look at, and as I said, we're just to put it into practice over the next couple of weeks to get ready for Meath.
Yeah, I spoke to Desi Farrell after the game. He took a lot of positives from the performance. You know, it was a good Division 2 game. You know, it was good intensity, and I suppose that's what you want when you're preparing for a championship. But I suppose people don't associate Dublin losing down the last stretch, you know, to really be able to get over the line. They expect Dublin to do that. Why do you think that didn't happen?
Yeah, look, I suppose we haven't probably met up as a group yet since the game, so we'll have our analysis of it and go through it. But obviously there was key moments at the end. We probably had the ball towards that last play and just turned it over, unfortunately, and then gave Derry that last opportunity. So it's a bit of just game management in terms of just making sure that if we're not going to win the game, make sure we don't lose it. So it's probably holding on to it a little bit better and working a better shot. But yeah, look, as I said, we'll go back to the drawing board and back to training and see what happens from next week.
What is the challenge like of now being asked these questions rather than questions on back-to-back All-Irelands? Because obviously since you've been in quite a while now, a lot of All-Irelands to your name. So you went from back-to-back All-Irelands to now maybe Dublin have pulled back to the pack a little bit. What's it like now to be asked those questions, I suppose?
Yeah, no, I think it's a challenge, really. It's something that a lot of the group haven't been exposed to, but we've been exposed to it for the last 2.5 years, really. So it's something that we are quite used to now at this stage, and I suppose just the bigger the adversity, the bigger the opportunity as well. So you know, we know exactly where we are as a group. We've been hugely competitive, obviously, in the championship the last 2 seasons, and not been too far away. But the primary objective at the moment is to try and get promoted from Division 2 and get back to Division 1, and that's where you want to play football. That's where everyone wants to be. So yeah, big couple of weeks ahead of us in terms of the games against Meath and Louth, and hopefully we get the results there to take us back to Division 1.
And do you feel that you need to adapt your game style at all? That was something maybe after the Derry game that people talked about, playing one style of football, and can Dublin adapt their play to certain teams? Do you feel like there's been an evolution over the last 3 or 4 years, or are you sticking with that style of play that you would have always played?
Yeah, look, you're always evolving. You're evolving game by game, not even year by year. But I suppose how the game has gone now, it can be quite frustrating for maybe inside forwards and stuff like that with so many teams back. So you're trying to get your ball players on the ball as much as possible. But it is difficult. The game is now more so like basketball with 15 behind the ball, and 15 attacking, 15 defending. So it's challenging. And look, you're trying to break that mould and come up with ways to play a bit more attacking football and not play sort of mundane, boring football at times. But it's a challenge, and it's something that we're aspiring to do at the moment and working on the training ground. So we'll see what happens come summer.
Yeah, you really need your fitness levels to be through the roof to be able to play that style of play. And I suppose, is that something that you look to peak come championship time?
Yeah, look, I think particularly this year with the championship, it's a totally different championship. Nobody's played in anything like this before, so it's going to be interesting from a player's perspective, management, and the strength and conditioning staff for every county, because it's week on week, so recovery is going to be huge, and when to peak, when not to peak is a difficult question, and it's something very hard to know when that's meant to be first. So look, we'll see what happens. I'm sure the lads have a plan for the summer ahead, but you just have to earn the right to get there first, and we'll see what happens then.
What is it like in the panel at the minute? Obviously some new faces are coming in and putting their hands up for places, and then you've some of maybe the older lads that are still there too, that are very much in contention and still starting. What's it like, I suppose, the dynamic of, I suppose, competition for places? Yeah, look, the competition for places has always been so high in Dublin, and it's something that, you know, drives the standards in training and then gets you to perform in games. And a lot of guys back, a lot of guys coming back from injury as well, which is positive for the group. And it's like you want everyone back. It's obviously the nature of the sport and sport in general that you're always going to have injuries, but I think we're getting more players back now than on the sidelines, which is really encouraging. And I think they're just waiting for the weather to get a little bit better and a little bit warmer before they're back. But I think it's great to have those guys back, and as I said, it's going to just drive that level of competition and hopefully just improve us then as a team. How has the inter-county setup changed from when you started out to now? I'm sure there's been massive changes. You said that, not me. No, not at all. 33 now. Look, it's changed. It's totally changed. Like Jesus, when he was first in the panel in 2009. When Kerry beat us that time by 17 points. Was on the bench that day. It's totally changed from just sort of an analysis perspective and video work. It's you have every camera angle available to you now, and everything is analysed and maybe sometimes over-analysed, but that's just the nature of it now. It's the same in club football even now. It's gone to such a high level, which is great in one way, and in another way it can be a bit of an overkill at times, but it's just trying to strike that balance. But certainly the game, and it's evolved an awful lot since my time started off. And even the commitment levels, I know you always would have had the commitment levels, would always been there, but is there maybe even more expected of you now? Since I've been playing, I suppose that you're always doing obviously the training that's prescribed from the team, and then you're always doing that little bit of extra work yourself, whether it's working on your free taking or just injury prevention stuff or general recovery. So like inter-county football and club football now at the stage, it's a 6 or 7 day a week job. You know, it really is, like, on top of your family life, on top of your work. So it's it's a very busy time, but it's something you enjoy. Look, if you didn't want to do it, you wouldn't do it. So it's certainly something I enjoy, but it's fairly full on. You mentioned family life. You obviously have had a baby not too long ago, so things have changed, I'm sure. What is that like? Are you getting sleep, or how is that all going? More grey hair now at the moment, but look, Sadie's great, and Neve's brilliant, very accommodating from football as well. But having a baby it's a game changer. Definitely gives you a bit more perspective. But she's brilliant. Like she actually sleeps incredibly well, so that's good. Touch wood now. She'll continue with that and get more sleep than I've ever got, so that's certainly a positive. Case for Neve as well? That's a positive. No, it is, fairness, it is for Neve. I do the odd night feeding, but no, thankfully she's gone off that now. But no, it certainly gives you a different outlook in life, but thankfully she's all healthy and well. Is Neve still playing club football? Neve is, she's playing club football. She's actually playing O'Connor Cup this weekend as well. She's doing a PhD in TUD, so she is going up to the Dome to play somewhere I've never played, so I don't think I'll play up there either. She's one up on me, but yes, she's back. She's enjoying it. She's 87 months, but Neve was back playing with the club after 8 weeks after Sadie was born, so she's that's incredible. I couldn't do it now. I couldn't do it. Fair play, it's amazing. Well, Dean, thanks so much. No worries, actually. Thank you. Ronan, how has life been as a Dublin hurler and obviously Kilmacud Crokes as well?
Yeah, it's been good. We've had a good year and back in the setup now with Dublin, so enjoying it. A lot of work to be done, but getting through it now.
Yeah, definitely a good year from a club perspective anyway. So successful for the football and the hurling. The hurling against Ballyhale Shamrocks in the Leinster final, a brilliant game. I was at that game. I suppose, how was that for the club to have gone that far and to be in Croke Park?
Yeah, it's definitely a special year for the club across all codes. I think from a hurling perspective, it's something we hadn't done before, winning sort of consecutive county titles. So to then progress on into a Leinster final was really special. Wasn't to be on the day, but definitely a learning experience, and proud of all the success we've had throughout the club. So yeah.
And for both teams to be there, was unbelievable. You don't see that ever, that the football and the hurling are there competing in the All Ireland Championship.
Yeah, it was bizarre in a way. Like there was a lot of buzz around Stillorgan throughout the sort of weeks leading up to it. But then when it came to the day, you nearly forgot that the footballers were out after us. You were so focused on your own game and your own job, and you sort of felt for Brian Sheehy in a way that he was sat in one dressing room preparing for a hurling game, and then 60 minutes later he was back in a football dressing room preparing for the Leinster final again. So no, it was definitely a special experience for the club.
Yeah, that was unbelievable that he was going to play both games. Like, it's just crazy. But fair play to him. Obviously a dual player is something that's not dying out, but it's harder to do. It's just so tough nowadays with the fixtures and the likes of it. I'm sure there would have been way more, but it's just nearly impossible at times.
Yeah, they're few and far between, especially in Crokes. Like we've two very competitive senior teams, and you need to be at every training session to be keeping your jersey and keeping your spot in the team. So the nature of the game is gone, that you're training 3 times a week, so that you just the time demands and the physical demands of playing both are at a high level anyways, are probably gone from inter-county and from senior club games.
And obviously there was lots of drama with the footballers, with Glenn afterwards. What was that like, I suppose, as a club person? What was it like for the club? I'm sure it mustn't have been the nicest time, I suppose, celebrating in All-Ireland, but then hearing the next day that maybe it's not your All-Ireland just yet.
Yeah, I was at the game, and I suppose the first reaction was just immense pride. Like, I'd be friends with a lot of the lads on the football setup, would have played football the whole way up, so would have known them, and was really happy for them. And then to see sort of the following day and the sort of following weeks, that being dragged out, and I felt for both sets of players in a way that they couldn't just park it and move on, and that Crokes couldn't celebrate properly in a way. But no, I suppose looking back on it now, that they've been crowned champions, and they can be really proud of the success that they've had, and hopefully that there'll be more to come.
Did they get to celebrate a second time?
I'm not sure now. I wasn't involved in the celebrations. I was there the first night and congratulated them, so I'm not sure if a second round of celebrations happened, but yeah, I'd say so.
And then for you personally, then you were just telling me that you have a hamstring issue at the minute, so you're not playing?
Yeah, I'm out. I'm sidelined for a couple of weeks, so I'm working through a rehab program, trying to get back. So I'm hopeful that I'll be back in time, but we'll see. Time will tell.
And give us an insight into Dublin hurling at the minute. Is there new faces in there? What's it like?
Yeah, no, there's a huge turnover in players. A lot of lads stepped away for different reasons last year, and we've a lot of young lads coming up through underage setup. So there's a lot of new faces. We've a new management team as well. So it's been going well so far. The group are gelling well, and the management team are professional, and they've put in place a lot of good resources that have helped us progress as a team. So hopefully that'll continue.
When you have new management in, does it bring, I suppose, a freshness? There's, I suppose, this energy that you want to prove yourself as well?
Yeah, no, combined with the young lads who are competing for your place. So a lot of the more experienced players are trying to impress the new management, as well as keeping out young lads from taking their jersey. So no, it breeds competition in a way that lads are trying to impress and constantly trying to improve and put their hand up come championship time.
Some good performances in the league so far. I know you've been sidelined, but I suppose, what have you made of it?
Yeah, I've been watching on, doing stats here and there, so I've stayed involved. I suppose it was a good win here the first day against Antrim, and we'll have them later on in the year in Championship, so it was a good test for ourselves first day out. And then we were sort of disappointed in ourselves with the tip performance. We thought that we could get something from the game, and hopefully now this weekend it'll be a different story down in Kilkenny.
Yeah, Kilkenny this weekend in Kilkenny in Nolan Park. I'm sure that's a game you would have liked to have played in, especially to get one back on the Ballyhale Shamrocks lads. Yeah,
I suppose each game you sit out, you're just more eager to get back in, and yeah, Kilkenny will be a good test in the league, so hopefully we'll put our best foot forward and either get a win or learn something for it come championship time. I suppose that's the be all and end all is the championship games in summer.
I was speaking with Dean Rock just before you came in, and we just spoke about the challenges of being an inter-county player. How do you find it trying to balance life, personal life, your work with being an inter-county player as well?
Yeah, I suppose it kind of ebbs and flows in a way, how well prepared you are, and you know, you kind of get into a routine, and then if something upsets it, then you're sort of thrown for a couple of days. But yeah, it's difficult. It's an ongoing challenge, but I think it's definitely worth it. You know, all the sacrifices you make and sort of the extracurricular stuff you give up outside of playing hurling or football or whatever it is, that it's definitely worth it when it comes to representing your county.
Yeah, I was asking them what the best part and the toughest part of it is. What would you say the toughest part is?
I suppose keeping people happy. You never want to let anyone down, and particularly if it's a family member or a close friend, and you kind of have to, you know, tell them I'm too busy at the moment. Can I, you know, put it off till the next week or the following week? And yeah, it can be tough to say no sometimes to people. So yeah, I suppose letting people down is definitely the hardest part.
And then the best bit?
Best bit's definitely representing your county and representing your family and your club. So when it comes to championship days and you get a good win, that those people coming onto the pitch, that they've helped you and they've supported you the whole way there. It's nice to kind of pay them back in a way.
And what is the aim or the goal? Have you spoke about it as a team, what you want to do this year?
Yeah, I think each player is different, but I think as a collective we're always trying to improve and aiming to win. Like, you want to win every game, every player does, and yeah, we're hoping to progress on and hopefully win Leinster and on into the All-Ireland campaign. So yeah, that's the goal for the year.
O'Byrne, how has it been with Dublin Camogie at the minute? Obviously you just started the league.
Yeah, like, look, it's all positive from our side. I know by looking at the scores, you know, it kind of looks like we're on a downward path, but really the improvement we've made in the last few weeks has been very positive, and our performance against Kilkenny the last day was just proof of that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it is 3 defeats in the league so far, but as you said, that Kilkenny performance, I think in particular in the second half, really showed that, you know, there's improvement there, and you're coming up against big teams as well.
Yeah, exactly. And realistically, if we look at it, like this time last year, around May time, we would have played them in the Leinster final and got there was way more of a gap in the score. So I think 6 points was a big positive to take away from that, especially with new players, and we're a young team and there's new management in and stuff. So I think it's all positive anyway.
Yeah. And there's new players in, new faces, as you've mentioned. So is it completely new to get used to playing together, or what's that dynamic like?
Yeah, like, definitely it's kind of always been the case with us that we've had to adapt to a lot of new management and players stepping away and a lot of injuries, but I think luckily enough we're actually a very player-led team, so it's only a positive. You know, we just kind of bring the same mentality every year, regardless of the managerial changes or you know, players leaving and players coming in, stuff like that. Yeah, so
yeah, you just got to stick to yourselves and what you do best. As you said, you've had some managerial changes. There has been 2 managers this year, so that's not the ideal start that you would have liked. I suppose, what happened there and how was that transition?
Yeah, look, I think, like, looking in, it's being a senior intercounty manager is a big task to ask, and you know, I said before, like, it's a big part of your life, but it's not your whole life, so that goes the same for managers. And I think with the setup that we have now, we're in good hands. You know, we're, as I said, we can easily adapt to those kind of changes. So yeah, it's all been positive really. We have Jerry McQuaid in now and Mickey McCulloch. And our backroom team is insane, like having Mags Darcy there, who's like
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon